All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Golden Rogue Podcast. Should be the finale of Season 1 as well as 2024. This is part 2 of the AD episode. So we are going to chat with the Danzers, Ted VanVleck, and hopefully a couple others if I can get them on in time. This will round out Season 1, and like I said, the year. Just wanted to kind of give you guys an insight into how a lot of the games a lot of you go to are run and why people do what they do. So, very quickly, the usual. I don't get to mention the Barn Gym anymore because they are closing January 1st. I would guess Matt is going to be a little more sporadic on these episodes right now, just having to deal with all that. So bear with us and only seeing my face and hearing my voice. My bad. So, but also check out Badger Highland Game Supply, goinrogue.com. You can follow all the updates for the Woodridge Farm games as well as the Blue Ridge Championships on there. Chem Stud, if you need a chemistry solving equation. And then, of course, heavyathlete.com. If you haven't made an account, I'm sure we'll get into that with Ted a little bit. But definitely go do that. Sign up. It's where the majority of championships are going to be run off of as far as scoring. And it's honestly just a lot better. So go check it out and enjoy the episode. Thanks. And there we go. So now we are recording live, whatever you want to call it. Nice. I don't have Matt with me, unfortunately, because of all of the closing of the barn and everything. So
I was just talking to him on the phone.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, he didn't pick up what I called, so yeah. It must be nice.
Well, it was also me trying to watch a throw that I can't comprehend the distance, and then trying to help polish technique that I think might or might not be there.
Oh, was it one of his throws with his new function weight start? Yeah. I'm interested to see how that goes. I don't know.
So he didn't put the distance up on the internet, but the distance is really, really far.
Yeah. So, it must be really cool to be Matt and have throws that go really far. That's.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it just beats the heck out of me, man. That's why I started running games, because I was like, I'm going to do something. Yeah. But that's what we're here to talk about is running games. So I wanted to put together an episode, which is now turned into 2 episodes. You guys are going to kick off part 2 because we just had a bunch of ADs want to talk. I wanted to break down why ADs do what they do and kind of give people like a behind the scenes thing. Because I think it helps everyone to know what everyone's thinking and why they're doing what they're doing. So that's my hope. Now, do you guys only run the Holiday Highlander? Because that's the only one I explicitly know of. Is that all you guys have done? I'd say all. That seems diminutive, and that's not.
For Highland games, I would say the only other event that we help run would be the Oxford games that Buck runs in April. Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that. Sweet.
That's more Willie, and behind the scenes, organizing judges and us taking registration. But that's shifted because they started a nonprofit. And so now a lot of that's going through their website. So.
Okay, cool. So what would be the first game that you would say you guys ran then? Was it Holiday Highlander 1? Was that the first Highland games that you guys AD'd?
Yeah, and up until I think 1, 2, and 3, I don't even believe had Highland games involved. Mm-hmm. It was a Highlander out of the gates, and there were throwers that did the competition, but I don't think until we moved out to Dirtbag with a bigger space that we actually even thought about doing a Highland games with it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sweet. I'm going to learn so much stuff because I've never made it down there till the 7th one. So.
Yeah, and it was.
And that one was super mediocre.
Cold.
So.
Oh, no, it was great. I assumed they were all absolutely freezing every single time.
There's been some that have been pretty comfortable.
Last year was 70 degrees. The year before that was 60.
Yeah.
I think the first year we were out there it was 40 and really windy. But this was the worst by far weather-wise, I think.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah.
So then you partially already answered my next question of how have they changed? Because if 1 through 3 were all Highlander competitions and then you incorporated it, but overall, between all of the Holiday Highlanders, what are some of the big things that have changed and evolved versus things that have stayed the same?
Oh shit. I mean, the biggest evolution was, I mean, between 1 and 2, we changed charities.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of the big turning point for us. And then basically none of it is ever 100% the same, because what I'll do is right around the March, April timeframe, I'll sit down with some of the people that kind of help run it on the athletic side, and we kind of come up with what are the events we want to do for the Highlander. Because again, the Highland Games is always going to be the same events. So once we kind of figure out what we want to be able to run or what we want to be able to do, then we kind of go and we market it as either new or different. But like we've done some of the big changes. I think we did is the first time or second time we were out at Dirtbag, we did the ultimate class, which was it was a really cool concept. It's just really shitty logistically. Basically, it was the full Highland Games that we offered minus hammers, and then they had to do the actual strongman events as well.
So it was 11 events starting at 8 a.m. and they didn't get done that year that we did it till dark, and that was like 6 p.m. It was the longest day ever for them.
Yeah.
But
so I missed it.
A lot of people that came back this year and signed up for the ultimate class for the belt were upset that they didn't get to do all of the events. So we talked about it after this year, just like incorporating a little bit more Highland Games for the ultimate class, like maybe adding 2 or 3 events, because they were done relatively soon this year.
Yeah.
Even when we started them at 9 a.m.
And then up until I think 2 or 3 years ago, we always had caber in it, even for the Highlander folks. We did it for distance, kind of like they did in, I think it was Pure Strength 85.
Yeah.
No big deal, but whatever. And what was happening was it was just no one, you'd have a bunch of strong people, but no one would ever kind of respect like how fast caber happens. And there was like a couple like near misses with like people almost getting really hurt. And like, I mean, whatever. I mean, you can sue. I don't have any money, so if you want to sue me, you can have half of nothing. But it's to the point where it's like, if we're not going to practice the stuff enough to be like not dangerous with it, like we just have to take the event away. And I think that kind of hurt a little bit, because people really like the event, but it's like, dude, I'm not going to watch people. Turns out if you deadlift 1,000 pounds, you can still miss a caber and separate your shoulder pretty easily.
Yeah. Right.
So those have been the biggest changes, I think. I don't think we've really changed like rules or the admin stuff a ton.
I would say sheer volume of people. When we first did the first year, there was 34 athletes, I think. I looked back that signed up, and I would say the last 3 years, we've had over 120 athletes sign up. Maybe only like by the end of the day, people who show up were at like 95-ish. Because a lot of people will cancel, forget that they signed up months and months ago.
Yeah.
But we'll get 120 signups easily the last 3 years, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Pretty awesome. So you touched on it for a second there, Willie, because you guys do something different that I think helps you guys stand out, which is like the way you announce events for the strongman portion and for the ultimate and all that stuff. Where did you guys come up with that concept? Because it's really cool, and it seems like it's driven a lot of the engagement and keeping people invested year round, which is like a hard thing to do when you have an event that takes place one day a year. And so where did that whole thing come from?
I mean, it's literally looking at kind of like the nostalgia of the old World's Strongest Man. Like, what are some things that are cool that a lot of people don't know? And then trying to bring that back where it's, doing the holds. We did the brick lift this year, which I thought was a pretty cool concept.
The first year we did the natural stones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first year we had natural stones from and using a sponsor in our community. We just used like a local landscaper, and he had some random stones that he let us borrow, and then we just took them back when we were done. And that was a sponsorship for us. So that was a cool event.
Yeah, but I kind of look at like the overall concept of, if I was to enter the show, would I enjoy it?
Yeah.
And I try to really, when we sit down and we come up with events, like there's always, we do a little bit more novelty in our kind of medleys that are a little bit longer or something like that. But it's usually looking at, if there's some really cool ideas, what are the things? And then kind of going back to our global concept of, again, if you've ever been to a Highland Games, or a strongman show, like 25, 30 minutes after you get there, if you're not winning, like you don't want to be there anymore. Like they're long, no one's having a good time. Like we don't even have like the allure of like a powerlifting meet where it's like, oh man, you get to hear nothing but Pantera for 8 hours. Like it's just you're hanging out. So we did when we started the round robin thing, we looked at a lot of the events too as saying, hey, like what are things we're always going to have? Most of our events are going to be time capped just because we want to keep the flow going. So it has to be like certain events and certain within the event itself, whether it's a deadlift event, like we do some maxes, but a lot of it will be time capped just because we want to make it an efficient day for the people that are showing up. Because the last thing we do control is actually the weather. So when you're out there, it's like, man, like again, last time I didn't want to be there. You know, if I wasn't running that show, I wouldn't have wanted to go. So it's like, man, that sucks. And then you're like, oh, 9 hours of that. And you're like, that's real dumb. So trying to get it in and out as quick as we can has been a pretty good method as I use it for most of my things in life.
I think our events too are like it's not sanctioned for the Highlander portion, right? And so there's a lot of pressure when folks have to pay for a membership to be sanctioned. And then they have to pay for the gear and the things that they're using at the competition. So for us to change up the weight classes a little, like no pressure for people to actually weigh in. If they don't want to weigh in, they can go into whatever class they want to. And it's less pressure. It's at the end of the year. People can have a good time and just enjoy it rather than, feel the stress of having to perform if to kind of get to this next level of nationals or whatever it might be. And there's professionals competing against, amateurs and it can be a really cool experience for those that are competing. So I think that piece is a lot more fun too for the athletes when there's not a pressure to perform.
Yeah, and I think too is like, and you guys know this because you run games, but it's like once you invest in something like, like the Possefel, like that's a monetary commitment. So now I'm going to use it to basically recoup my funds, so that we try to figure out ways to do novel concepts with a lot of the same implements. Honestly, this is the first year in 7 years we didn't do anything with kegs.
Yeah.
So it's like, finding different ways to use the same things. I think it by going out and saying like we don't have to look at what is the new big trend in like strongman, like last year was like throwing bags, so everyone had to do like a weight for height. I was like, I don't give a shit, like we're gonna do whatever is gonna be efficient and cool, and it allows us a lot more, I think, freedom, and it also kind of going back to what you said is it's one day a year. So I want things that if you're not going to be able to train, like unless you went out and bought bricks, like that everyone is on the exact same playing field that day. So whether you're a pro or whether you're an amateur, whether you've ever seen it, like everybody is at the same level on that event. So I think it does make it for a lot more even playing field for a lot of the folks that are coming in.
Yeah. No, I think you guys, both of you have said it a bunch of times. It's just to make it fun because it is December. And I'd imagine, I know from perspective of the games, I'm not throwing my best in December. I think hardly anyone is. I would imagine strongman runs kind of similarly, and it's an unsanctioned thing, and everyone gets to show up and have a really cool time. And I think it speaks to y'all's ability to make that succeed. I mean, if you've had it running 7 years now and it's growing, it's really impressive. The amount of people I'll talk to who know about the Holiday Highlander,
Yeah, I think one of the things too was the very first year that we did it, there was a lot of like people who never tried strongman before. They were like people that Willie randomly trained in the gym, like showed up and just signed up for the event because Willie said, hey, you should do this, you should try it. And that's what it's been every year. There's been new athletes like trying the events. Like we had maybe 5 or 6 women show up in our garage just to test out some of the stuff because they'd never touched it before. And they don't do strongman and they've never done Highland games. So people just want to try it. And so the more that you encourage people to try it and like realize their strength too, like, and I can actually do this stuff. They keep coming back every year because they have a good time and then they bring people back with them.
Yeah. And then, to that same vein, you guys ran a Highland Games clinic with 4 or 5 pros before the Highland Games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, had y'all done that in years past, or was that a new thing?
So we had done a lot of clinics in the past. Like we would do 2 or 3 a year where it would come out and you could see the weights or you could throw a cable or you could do stuff like that. The hard part is like the schedule just gets away from us in the year. We try to help out with a couple other shows, and between competing and all that other stuff, like we just didn't have the time for the clinics. But ultimately, the basically the spawn of this whole thing was to basically make this a grassroots thing where we were going to give back to the community better than we found it. So, and it's also, it's 100% transparency for me as an athletic director, it's like, I don't want to put a shitty product either in front of people or on the field. So to me, it like you said, it's the last game of the year. Like if you're on your 8-month peak for the Holiday Highlander to hit big numbers, like you're doing it wrong. And it was basically a thing. It's like, hey, we have a bunch of really, really new or novice throwers. And I know like a lot of the other organizations are sitting down and saying, well, someone has to vouch for a game, or you can't just jump into a game anymore. So ultimately, like the people that had helped me as I progressed through the sport, I wanted to, instead of me playing a really bad game of telephone where they would have to come to a different clinic to learn kind of what the best know, let's just do it. And if anything, you just sacrificed a open stone and a lightweight for distance where, again, you should have had them throughout the year, or if you didn't have them, they're probably not great numbers anyway. So there's no difference between NASGA plays 750 and NASGA plays 700 that anyone else gives a shit about. So, but to me, it's like it makes sense to kind of, again, push and help facilitate the growth of the sport where we can kind of, if that's the little thing we can do. I think the only good that came from it, and the thing that I would always do if I was going to do it again, I don't know if we will, but we were putting it at a time you had already committed to. I think a lot of people that are very nervous or don't want things picked apart or don't want anything like that, they always have the excuse of, well, I don't want to drive or I don't want to go to a clinic. Where like if you didn't want to come to the clinic but you signed up for the game, like you're already committed to the exact same time frame, so you might as well come and get a little bit better.
Yeah. No, 100%. Next up, I've got, what is something that you guys wish athletes knew? And it can be either addressing like common complaints that you hear that are not just because they're not informed, or is there just a behind the scenes thing that you wish you could grab so many people and tell them because they like to bitch about certain things and it's just stupid or whatever?
The inability to fucking read.
Yeah.
Like
so
if
despite sending 8 emails before the comp and then they ask you to take.
So Kendra sends a bunch of emails, it's almost ad nauseum, right? But like
I sent 3.
You still
three
get
emails.
You still get the exact same questions. Like again, it's year 5. Like, oh, is the ultimate everything again? It's like everything is put out there, where if you just would read it out loud so that maybe you can hear it.
Yeah, sound it out with your finger. Just follow along.
Yeah, and it's almost to the point where it's just like people want to wait and have no information and then walk in the day of and ask every question imaginable.
Yeah, like we put our events out one at a time. We explain them. We send out rules. We post the rules. People still ask questions and they don't read the rules. Like, so that's probably the most annoying is like we push as much as we can out on social media. You might get an email, thanks for your registration. Like, let us know if you have any questions, or there's even that question on our registration form. What questions do you have for us? Mm-hmm. Nobody ever puts a question in there, but so just read. Like we put it out there, read it and you'll see it.
I mean, I understand to a certain point that there is going to be questions about certain things. But again, if you've done Highland games, it's 100% standardized. Like, the 56 always weighs 56. The weight over bar has to go up. Like there's certain things that like, if you've done this, you get it. Yeah. And it's like, I get frustrated every year with it, but like, I even messaged like Haley is doing a very good job for their show. It's like, she's shooting video and narrating it and doing all this to the point where it sounds like you're talking to children, which essentially it's just big. You're just talking to big muscular children at this point. It's like, man, this seems really, really, watered down, but it's like, man, at a certain point, like, I don't think that anyone actually cares enough to finish reading anything ever. And it's like, all right, man, well, we have to kind of keep going that. But that would be probably the biggest gripe that I have. Or if it's again like, like weighing in, like, oh man, or the day of, like I got to change my class. Like, how the fuck did you not know? Like, you had a scale. How did you not? Oh shit, I missed it. I'm 15 pounds over.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like, and those guys are never off by a pound. Those guys
Yeah.
are off by 10 plus. Like, what?
It blows my mind. It's like I woke up fat today. There's a 97% chance I'll be fat tomorrow. So already coming in what it's going to be. I don't understand why this is like it sneaks up on you. You're like, oh shit, I didn't make weight. No, man, you were off by 15 pounds. Like, should I take my pants off? No, you shouldn't. Like, unless you're wearing Jankos, bro, it doesn't matter. Like,
I think that's one of the freedoms that we allow ourselves to. Like, we get by like dealing with a lot of complaints, or we don't have to really worry about them as much because it's not sanctioned. So it's not really that big of a deal. Just have a good time is kind of our response a lot of times. But there's always somebody that's pissed about something. So, I mean, you just have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt, really.
Yeah. I mean, we had people this year that were upset that they didn't get to do the Highland Games clinic because they didn't sign up and they were doing the Highlander. It's like, it literally is the same time. Like,
yeah, you can't do both.
Like, I didn't get to do the clinic. No shit, you were competing. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, next year, don't do whatever it is you were doing and do the Highland Games clinic.
Or those same people, though, are going to be the people that say they want more clinics, and then when you do host one, they're not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like, it's, and the thing is like, I was very nervous about the clinic because we went down to South Carolina for Matt and Adrian's thing a couple weeks prior to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when I look at it, I think a lot of people just don't realize like how good is because they're new to the sport, and we're in this kind of almost, and I'm not hating on CrossFit, but it's almost a CrossFit-esque thing where there's just a lot of people coming in at the foundation, but they're not realizing like how good is. Mm-hmm. And because there's more and more games showing up, it's the level is kind of, everyone is staying kind of at the same point, and it's like there's not a ton of push to get up to the next level. And it's just, I see these clinics and like, in my opinion, Matt is going to be amazing. Like, he is going to be really, really good. And people should start paying attention to that. I mean, Adrian is arguably probably the best female, if not the best Highland Games competitor that's ever done it, regardless of gender. Like, the fact that there's not hundreds of people that want to do Highland Games at these things, and it's just like, it's like, or like I'll sit there and I'll be just standing there talking to people, and they'll be like, well, I'll just go home and I'll film more of my videos. Yeah, I film my videos all the time. I look shitty in every video. If I could fix it, there would be a video where I wasn't shitty. But It's like, why don't you let them film you where they're narrating to you what you need to be doing so you have some kind of concept of what good is. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't want to step out of my comfort zone, and I don't want to be told I'm bad. And it's like, dude, I've been bad for 14 years at this.
Yeah.
It's arguably one of probably the greatest streaks in sports history.
Undefeated.
Yeah. I pretty much, I think I've lost to Thor 14 years. Like,
it's you and the Cowboys just keeping up this.
Yeah. I am the Highland Games version of the Chicago Bears at this point. Like, I can't figure out a way to win.
Yeah. Hey, you went Masters. That was a step in the right direction,
Yeah. Thank God for attrition-based models. I just had to survive.
Yeah, dude, when you hit 60, if you're still in one piece, you're going to be cooking.
Yeah. Oh, God. I'm doing this at 60. Jesus.
Oh, jeez. That reminded me of something. Now I've forgotten it, so it doesn't matter. We're going to move on. What would you say that you guys, we've talked about it, and it's kind of repetitive, but like, what is different in regards to the Holiday Highlander versus somewhere else? If somebody had two different games or shows that they were looking at in December, like, what makes yours stand out or a better time, or however you view it?
I mean, I think since we moved to the brewery, just like the atmosphere, like people can, and the fact that we try to get you done fast so that you can enjoy the day. Like, of course it was cold this past December, but like last year, I think all of our strongmen and women, the Highlander port was done by 1:00. And so everyone, and I think our Highland Games were done about 3 or 4. So everyone could just kind of enjoy the brewery, the atmosphere, the distillery, the cigar shops, the vendors. Like, So I think just creating a space where people can have a good time and enjoy themselves is something that sets us apart a little bit from, the normal Highland Games kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like, especially in the Highland Games. I mean, I'm not trying to kind of downplay what the tradition should be and that we shouldn't care about the tradition, but 90% of Highland Games are like stuffy. Like it's like, oh, this is how we've always done it. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's consistent, but it doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
So it's like when you show up, we try to make it fun. We try to sit down and say like, hey, we even in the Highland Games, move to what's open. Like, don't sit down and wait just because there is a certain thing that we have to do. I think the round robin style that we do with the Highlander makes it a lot more efficient. And there's always people like, oh, we got to do, we had to do grip, and then I had a deadlift and it affected my deadlift. One, no one gives a shit, man. But two, it's like, so the rest of the group, it's always even no matter what we're doing. I think that it's trying to do it where if it's basically a party with weights and stuff.
And the cause also, right? Like, giving back to, the veteran and active duty service member community. And with the last 3 years now, we've partnered with the SFA, or the Special Forces Association, Chapter 100 out of Fayetteville, where they do their jingle jog. I used to run the jingle jog, and then it started to land the.
You might want to say like you jog.
Stop. I ran at the jingle jog.
I mean, you participated. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Don't make it sound like you were fast. Also, don't make it sound like you were an AD.
Anyways, we used to run it. So it started to land on the same date of our event. So they always like to come to our event. And so we're just like, well, let's partner together. And so that first year we did it, they had over 300 runners. So it brings more people out to the brewery. It gets more recognition to the, sport of strongman, to the sport of Highland Games. To the organization continuing the mission that we're, fundraising for, puppies, beer, and weights. Like, what's better than that, really? And if you like to run, then you can run, but you don't have to.
No, you shouldn't.
There's lots of options for lots of different types of athletes to come out and have a good time.
Yeah, no, having it well-rounded like that is pretty cool. I remembered what it was, and I wrote it down. And this was literally a tangent. This matters not at all to the episode. But we're talking about people not realizing how good is. Have you guys seen everyone posting their little year-end numbers this year, their goals, and how absurd some of them are?
Yeah.
Like, even from a throwing, I watched somebody the other day say they had like a 30-foot open stone and they want to throw a 42 by next year, and I was like, I don't know if you realize what that 12-foot gap on an open stone is. That is,
well, it's just it's really weird to me, like when you look at that and. Yeah, it's like people don't, but it's like then you ask someone, it's like, well, how much you practice? I just show up on Saturdays. That's almost a surefire recipe for not getting 42 feet. Like,
right?
The amount of reps, the amount of time, the amount of effort, and then you're not playing in genetics or if you actually are talented, but I think it's really weird to me is there's a very strong line between, I think, people that enjoy kind of coming out and this is a camaraderie thing, which I think it should be. But then it's like, this is also an athletic thing. And I think that just because we put the word games after Highland, that people think that it's just a thing where you can come out and kind of do it, because that's a lot of it. Even when we're talking to regular people, when we're setting up, people are just like, oh man, you're doing this Highland Games thing? Is that where you flip a telephone pole? Yeah, man. Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'll just come out and do that. It's like, you won't. Like, you can't, man. Like, I don't think you realize like how shitty this gets real fast on your body. It's like, you've never picked up 56. You never tried moving with 56. Like, it wrecks your soul. Like, it's not something you just randomly do on like a Saturday. Like, just feeling spry, I'm gonna go give this one a shot. It's like, no, dude. Like, again, there's a lot of people that look sloppy that do the sport, but it's like me, right? Like, I'm not impressive to look at.
No.
Yeah. Dramatic pause. But
maybe not athletically, but
yeah, I have a great personality. But it's like there's still a large bit of like you can train powerlifting or you can do this bodybuilding thing in the gym, and you can't come out and do what we can do. So it's to me, it's like you have to have this concept of like, man, what is like good at the sport? And then you look at numbers And it's like, I talked to a dude, he's really good and he's up and coming. He's like, I want to break Spencer Tyler's lightweight record. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, bro, you don't realize right now you'd have to throw it, jog out there, pick it up, and throw it again from the spot it landed. Like I don't think just because you're in the realm, it's like, oh, if I threw this in year 1, if I just keep progressing, year 5, I'm gonna be throwing 300 feet. Like it doesn't work like that, man.
No, if that works, you'd be throwing 800 feet by now.
Yeah. You're like, where'd you put your lightweight? Oh, the moon. I just threw it in the moon a second ago. Like, it's gonna be a shitty one to go get.
Oh God. Yeah. No, I needed to commiserate to someone with those posts, and Matt's too busy to pick up the phone, so I need to vent that some people are absolutely insane. So
yeah. Well, it's also just again the fact that in such a weird niche thing that's a thing that actually makes it out.
Yeah.
Like, well, man, what are your goals? My goal is to be healthy-ish. Like,
yeah.
It don't mean like my heart or like my body. It's just like I want my bones not to break on me this year. Like that's a win again.
Yeah. If all my ligaments are in the same place at the end of season that they're at now, we're cooking. One of the questions that got submitted to us on social media doesn't necessarily apply to y'all's games, but you've both been in the realm for a while. Kendra is a pro athlete, and so someone asked for advice for new pro throwers. They wanted to know what ADs thought. If you've got someone who just turned pro, what little nugget of advice would you give that person going forward, whether it's trying to get invites or whatever?
I have no idea. I don't know what a pro really is on the women's side.
Well, it's now a thing. It's real.
Yeah. I guess I threw as a pro in the Crystal Coast Highland Games.
I did not.
So yeah, I think building relationships with people is important if you want to do that. But that's the only one I've ever thrown in, so I can't really speak to that as much.
We'll record it again after next September if you can make our games.
Yeah. No, I do plan. It's my birthday weekend.
Well, so. I think the big thing is whether you're, if you're a new pro and you're coming into this, like I think that the overall structure of the professional side of Highland Games, whether it be male or female, we eventually have to make it universally accepted that, again, it is a thing that is based on points. So your points should represent where you're going and what games you're allowed to go to.
Yeah.
I think there's too much that's involved in this. Again, these are the games we pick, or we pick local pros or whatever you want to do. Again, we all know because, again, with heavy athlete, like what good is. They're ranked. Yep. So to leave this thing, and then when you start looking at it, it's like, well, why is this person there and they have 2,000 less points than this guy? And it's like, well, this person doesn't like him. And it's at that point, like we're screwing the system over because we would rather have friendships than to sit down and say, like, no matter what your game is, you have a responsibility, the patrons that are coming in and paying you money as an AD to put the best possible product on the field. Mm-hmm. And I think there's too much in line with like, I need to have, and this might ruffle feathers, but I don't give a shit. I run a charity game. And if they don't want to pay me no money to show up again, I'm actually paying to hang out with people, which is the most ironic thing about amateur sports, to not like anyone and then to pay to be around them. But I want to, as an AD, I want to save some money, so I'm going to bring in local pros. And all we're doing is we're just ADs are basically they're trying to basically create as low overhead as possible. But it's like put good pros in. Like there is a very, very fine line to me of where you're just making this, like, I think the biggest downside of strongman when you get down to it is a lot of it is a money grab. You're playing a volume game where you're basing it and you're building it on the backs of everyone you're asking to come and compete for you. Where there's a certain point, if again, you're running a small games and you don't have a huge budget, bring in a couple local pros. But if you have the ability to let, good people shine, that's what we should be doing. We should be putting the best product out there, or just stop bitching that no one takes our sport seriously. Like if you have a game and a pro throws something that it beats them, it should be just like European soccer. You're just relegated. You don't get to be a pro anymore. Whoever beats you now, they're a pro and they're on the chopping block at the next game.
Yeah, you're spending the next 6 months in the A's until you break 7,000.
Yeah, like we have a system and we have a database. We just don't want to use it because it was like, well, this guy came up in our ranks and we owe him. Like, no, we don't. You don't owe me shit. If you're an AD, you don't owe me anything. I'm gonna pay, and if I'm good enough, I'll make it out of there. I do think there is a need for the social media component, but I don't think it should factor into whether we want a person to come. If you make cool reels and stuff like that with, what would be considered yacht rock or love songs, and you're up in a field and there's a Burger King by it, like, yeah, does that draw ladies? Absolutely. No. But like, in no way would that be a thing that'd be like, we want Willie to come because he has an awesome taste in music.
And, hell yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's for some reason it's like, well, this person's got a great social media presence and they'll build our games up. It's like, well, maybe we should actually try to get with the times and use things to actually build the games up through us actually trying as an athletic directors.
Yeah, I think there's two main points in there that I really like that you hit on, and one is that you need to give good people a space to shine, because ultimately you're gonna kill things off if you don't do that. Because your good B's that want to become A's and your good A's that want to become pros, guess where they're not going? They're not going to your game where nothing seems competitive athletically. Like, they're going to go somewhere else. Good competitive people don't want to be on that stage. They want to be somewhere where it's touted as actually being impressive.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of 6,500 point athletes that you're calling pros, like.
Yeah, but I think the games that Danny did where there was money on the line, I think that's a great idea. That's a great initiative.
Well, it's a great road too, right? Because then you, from the athletic director spot, you don't have to budget the same way you would for a typical quote unquote pro class. So you can still draw in a few big throwers and put on a great show and have everyone at the same place. It's definitely a best of both worlds. And then the other point was, you kept using the word, and I use this a bunch for all the part one interviews, was a product. It drives me nuts when athletic directors don't realize that is what you're giving people. Like, just because we don't physically make a thing, like, I still have a duty to all the people that paid me registration fees for them to have a good time and throw on good implements and get decent marks, or at least give them the opportunity to, and provide the good product to the venue that's letting us be there. Like, I think a whole lot of people end up on a high horse or just disassociated or whatever, and they lose sight of that for some reason.
It's never, as an AD, it's never about you. It's not about the thing that you're doing. It's about, again, do the people want to come back? Because 90% of the money is going to be made on your registration. Like, we're not going to gross so much money from people that are walking in to want to see this. And the sooner people realize that, I think that the better we're going to be. That doesn't mean that we have to take a hit for the athleticism, the time, and the effort that goes into all of it. But you just have to be realistic. Like, it's not a thing where, you're going to have, they're like standing room only and it's going to be like Pleasanton. Like, it's there's a reason those games exist, and that not everyone gets to go to them. But if you keep trying to make every game to the point where it would be that, I think that now if you make it more competitive where people want to try harder, and now the base always gets better, now the product has to get better. But if it's always just, I want to do this thing, or it's like, everyone gets paid the same. Like, what would kill me if I was a pro and I had put in time and effort? It's like, you're going to send me out there, and I know that they all need numbers. I don't know the exact system, but they all have to have numbers to go to, the bigger games. But it's like, you're going to pay us the exact same amount to come out and do something for the entire day, but you want us to compete. Why would I put any more effort in if I've already made my money?
Yeah.
But then it's like this mind-blowing concept. Like, again, it should always be, you should have it is scaled out so that people want to come out and throw. I don't want to watch professionals throw bad, or to not try. And that's what a thing is, especially around here. It was a thing, and I used to say this, and I mean this 100%. One of the biggest travesties that would happen to athletes in this area that never got to see Wes throw at 100% of what Wes could do. Because it was always, hey man, come out and do this pro demo and I'll give you $100. And it's like, dude, I want to watch him go all out.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to watch that at the first Crystal Coast games. And it's like, holy shit, he's on another level. I mean, again, but again, you don't get to see that until you have to front the money to get this stuff. And I'm just using his as a specific example, but it should be for that for a lot of the guys.
No, but it's a great example. I realized the same thing after the first few games ever that I was with Wes at. I was like, oh, he's better than me, but he's not throwing bombs. And then you went and looked at his numbers, and you could see some of the other games that he's done, like how he got to Celtic and you're like, holy shit, when Wes gives a shit.
Yeah. Well, but it's like, it's like, it's a thing for me. It's a thing that a lot of this generation's really good guys are either going to age out and go to Masters, or they're going to retire, and enough people wouldn't have seen what they actually could do. And that's one of the honestly the best things I think about being in the sport for as long as I have, is I've seen a lot of guys, be really good for really long periods of time, but at different spots. It just seems like as of late, we're getting to the point where it's more about how much money does an athletic director walk out of a games with, where it's like, man, we really missed an opportunity to let people shine.
I think that's something that we have to go back and forth with. I would rather see on our field for the Highland games, a shit ton of pros, bring Adrian, bring Emily, bring Wes, bring Jonathan, have a games like that, and Matt or whatever, but have a games like that where people can actually see how good they actually are. But we also struggle with, we lose, probably $3,000 in registration fees, that we can give back to the organization. Cause I mean, we try not to spend any money, right? Because we're doing it for charity. And so we lose a lot of money if we bring in pros too, with our specific games. So that's a little bit different for us. I wish we could do that. Maybe we need to work a little harder to fundraise, but it's a lot of work. So,
but I think it's we would have to find a different field. We'd have to I said a big reason we had to get rid of because I think Matt and Jordan threw last year. I told Matt he couldn't come back and throw because he would out throw the field.
Yeah.
So it's you are limited by certain things as an athletic director, but if it is a thing where we're all trying to come up together, I think it's a thing where you can't skimp out on probably giving to the right amount of money to the people that we're basically using to put asses in seats. As much as I like a lot of low level throwers, and I've been a low level thrower and I've been a B, and they're not putting asses in seats. Nobody that throws 19 feet heavyweight is people are like, oh man, I drove 50 miles to watch that. No, you didn't.
No. It's a really fine line to try and walk, especially from the AD's perspective of how much room do we give those people to keep the sport accessible versus at what point are we watering down what we're making,
And that is the hardest thing I think that I've really come to struggle with over the last couple of years. But then I also have to go back and look at the framework of why we originally, what was our why to begin with, without ever growing, to me is, you hope that you find some guys I think we've used Matt's name a bunch in this, but again, he's got might be his fourth full year on the actual circuit. So he's an anomaly in the sport. So, you're hoping that if you do enough low level games and grassroots type stuff, you're hoping that you find more of those guys that want to commit and want to put the effort in. But you have to play the averages, and you assume that probably for every 50 people that come out, one is either going to stick with it or one's going to make it to an A. It's just a sad truth of where the games are at right now. There's a lot of people, but there's not a lot of movement in the rankings.
Mm-hmm. No, you're not wrong. I mean, it's hard to take a step back and look at that. I tend to look at just the 4 names above me and the 4 below me, but on the averages, you're not wrong, Yeah,
it's just, it's to the point right now where I think if you had multiple games in this area, you couldn't fill 5 to 8 man rosters with enough A's that would make the product that you'd be like, oh man, this is a really good game. I want to go to throw. Because I want that challenge. Mm-hmm. We are in a very weird time, and going back to what you were talking about, if as athletic directors we're not willing to update the model or to update what we're trying to do to promote this thing, to get it out there, to get in front of more people, it will go away. It's not a thing that people are like, man, I want to go to these Highland games. And a lot of times they go to the Highland games because of the festival,
Yeah.
or the geese or some other stupid shit. But, it's very rarely like, unless it's a well-known name, like they're not going to come out.
100%. There was a post earlier this year, and I remember who made it. I won't say their name, but some athletic director was on one of the Facebook groups, like basically calling Super A's pussies for not showing up or not signing up for a game. He's like, more of y'all need to take the jump. You got to go. And I'm like, you've given them no reason to.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, if we could downplay like the amount of weird niche classes in this thing, like
I was just gonna say that there's
or make them more
with the women, there's pro women, there's elite women, there's women A, there's something else, like there's another women's class. When I started in NASGA, and I think I'm in three of them, and the master's class, I'm in four of them, I think, on that website. So it doesn't make any sense the way that they have it set up. So you never know what you actually are, what you can sign up for.
Like a men's B lightweight or something, because they didn't even have a designation for a certain type of weight women. They had to throw it in a complete other, just unused class.
Yeah. But it's also, to me, is at a certain point, if you're reaching out and you're saying, hey, this needs to happen, we need more Super A's or whatever. There's a certain point where you have to look at it as an AD, like, what am I doing wrong? Why do people not want to come to my game? Because if you're going to put it out there that you need people, if you say, hey, Willie, I need you to come to a game, then I'm going to walk into the game. And if there's, I'm going to voice an opinion like, hey man, like it's always, to me, is like, well, you go to this game and you throw this 30-pound rock. Why? What would possess me to want to potentially get hurt because you have a giant rock, or you have this thing that's like a novelty thing? Like, you're asking and you're begging for good athletes, but then you're not letting them show the work that they're putting in by making all of this wackadoo shit that only you as the athletic director care about. I don't want to, I don't want to throw a heavy. I want it to be as close to not being a legal stone as possible every time I throw.
I want the spray paint on the implement to be what puts it at 28 pounds.
Yeah. Like, don't sit down and say like, oh, well, nobody wants to do this. Yeah, because it's a dumb idea. And the issue is we're not to the point where there's enough people that are going to sit down and say that I don't like this idea. You're just going to see it as a representation of no one's coming to your game.
Yeah.
That made me think of something. This might be off topic, but like for us at our games, like something that we focus on heavily is making sure the athletes are happy, like to make them keep coming back. Like when you sign up for our games, you get a shirt, you get samples from all of our sponsors, you get stickers, you get a patch, there's some sort of athlete gift that comes out, you get energy drinks. Like, we work really hard for people to come back. You pay $50 and you get more than $50 back, right? You can sign up for our raffles. You can win raffles. We have Athlete of the Day awards. We try really hard to give cool prizes when people actually win. So I think that's something too that athletic directors need to also do, is like work on ways to give back to the athletes so that they want to come back to your games also. I think that's really important too.
Well, y'all did something that I liked, because I had been tossing around the idea with Matt back when it was still both of us running games, before it was kind of just me doing the AD side of things. And it was like coming up with a survey to send people afterward.
Yeah.
So I was like, all of my games last year were in their first or second year. Like, I want to know what everyone thought of them. I was like, what if I just send out a little jot form afterward, just to figure out what people liked or didn't like? Because they may not it on day of. They may not want to bother me. They may not have thought of it until a week later. Like, I'd rather it keep being a better time for them than me just falling into the trap of what we all bitch about anyway, which is ADs that don't want to change what they're doing.
Right. One thing for us too, like that, I think one of the good feedback pieces that we got this year was, because we're doing our games for a charity also, like someone had mentioned like, that they didn't really know anything about continuing the mission. Again, that could be them just not going on our social media and like reading about what they do. But like, like make a video specifically with continuing the mission and push that out so people will watch that and know what they do. So So we did get some good feedback, back from people this year when we sent that out. So it gives you ideas too as an AD, like,
Yeah.
to do something a little different also.
No, I've been loving grabbing little bits of info from everywhere I went this year. I intentionally tried to make it to games and see ADs and see places I hadn't been just to try and get more info,
Well, yeah, I think that certain things would be kind of pie in the sky ideas that I always have. Do I think that there should be a universal, probably like governing body over this? Yes. I think that Danny is doing a hell of a job. Kind of again, you don't like wing trigs, or whatever his rules are. Like you don't have to go to his games, but by making it transparent and putting it out there, I think that is a big step. So people are then prepared for what you're doing. But if you go to his games are run smoothly.
Yeah.
Like you never hear people that complain. People, like, again, I'm not, I don't know. I mean, I want to, but it's like, it's his games are in Mississippi, Alabama. Like it is a haul, but it is something that, I as an athlete would at least consider because of how well that I've participated in things that he's run. Another guy that does it really well is Dr. Bill. Dr. Bill is like, I don't know, like maybe a lot of people don't realize what he's doing, but he's on this like outside area of all the other bullshit that is amateur Highland games, and he's putting on a show. Like you had the number 1 and number 2 best Highland games competitors in the world there. Like the fact that there wasn't more people that wanted to see that is mind blowing to me. He doesn't get caught up in the trivial bullshit, but again, you go there, you're looking at it was a class of 5 amateurs. And you're looking at a women's class, I think that was 5. So we are by far, the second tier, which again, we should be. I mean, maybe the women could be, you could make that argument, but you're talking guys that they're flying in from other countries. And you're making the athletics, always you hear all the time, well, I'm going to center this around the athletes. Well, what does that actually mean? Like, you're going to give me a t-shirt? I don't need any more t-shirts. Like, and it's like, oh, you can make a t-shirt quilt. No, I don't want a t-shirt quilt. Like I want more goddamn points than that's good. So,
scratchiest quilt ever made from quality cotton. Make a t-shirt quilt out of game shirts.
Yeah, but I think that even the way that the way that Danny's doing it, the way that Mandy did Dublin, I think that is a very, very good concept. Like, hey, if you're shitty, you can submit. And if your numbers are good enough, you will get the invitation to come. Yeah. I think that there needs to start being a middle tier of things where we're sitting down and saying we only want good people to come. And then you as the athlete have to by making the submission means that you're fully prepared to make the travel to wherever that is. Like you were there. So it's like, like we drove, I think it was 9 hours for us.
Yeah. Yeah. It was about the same from here to get up to Duncan.
So at that point, it's like you put your shit in hoping you're going to get picked. It's not like you got picked. You're like, oh, damn. And then you bail. Like you're fully prepared for what that means because you're going because you want to be around really good competition.
Yeah.
I think that has been lost too. It's just like you have a lot of these games. It's like you're going to keep the same pods of people and the order is almost predetermined at this point. And it's like, man, like this is a surefire way to keep the sport exactly the same way it is. But we're missing out on really good ADs that are doing really good things. And then the flip side of that coin is, oh, this is how I've always done it. No.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the Blue Ridge Championship thing that we're trying to do in September will go off well. Yeah. I'm hoping that gets people to travel outside of places they haven't been often, and also give people like a goal of something to do athletically. For all those people that might be on the cusp, like if there's an invite game in the area where they can go and win money.
I think that's huge because really the only other way that you're going to see premier competition if you are someone that wants to be good is like you're going to have to go to the East Coast Championships.
Yep.
And I mean that's cool, but for a lot of us, like and what people don't realize, that's a tough road.
Yeah.
Like now you're talking strategery and all this other stuff. Like you're going to either have to go to games where you might have the best shot of winning, or heaven forbid, you're going to have to spend the off season practicing and getting better so that your product is actually better when you personally walk out on that field. And I think that's one thing that I think falls on the athletes. It's not an AD's thing, but the AD should be out there trying to sit down and say, like, here's some of the names that are on my list. I need to go out and find the same quality of guy. or gal. Like, I can't understand why we want to balloon classes up to 15, and it's like, well, this is their first game. It's like, well, then what do you need me for?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. I agree 100%. The final thing I had for you guys, and you mentioned it very briefly earlier, but was why do you do it? Is it for the athlete? Is it for the charity? Is it little column A, little column B? Is it some secret third thing? Why have you put on 7 years of this thing that is undoubtedly eating up hours and hours of your time and tens of dollars?
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to say that if it wasn't cold this year, my hat wouldn't have come out. So we all would have walked out on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, so the whole reason this thing started, I don't know if you remember this. It was before. I mean, it has been around for at least 8 or 9 years. But there was up in Virginia, they did the tattoo festival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was
my first year I competed. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an exhibition quasi run by Brute,
Mm-hmm.
and the last year I went there, it was a thing where we were doing the demos and all that stuff, and they didn't have anyone on the mic because they didn't know what it was about. Like they knew kind of the thing. So I did a lot of the talking at the event, and honestly, it was coming back, and I went up with a dude, and we were riding back, and I was like, man, we could do this. Like we could do something like this. But I said, I don't want to. I only want to do it for charity. I don't want it because in my mind, once and this is something that I'm sure you guys kind of deal with on your side. But once we sit down and we say this is a for-profit show, the expectation of what the show has to bring is exponentially higher. And I'm not saying is that we make it a charity thing because we set a really low bar and we're not going to try. But I also want people to understand, like, it is a December thing. This is the best product that we can give you. But if you think that there's better products out there on the same day, go for them. But it was always for me is like, we need to pick a cause that it makes sense to us by both working in the, either with the military, the active duty, or the veteran population, especially in Fayetteville. That was a natural segue. Like we just happened to luck into the thing with Susie and continuing the mission. Her son just happened to intern for me at work as a strength coach. I didn't even know that was her son until we had our first meeting. But after that, it was like, this is a no-brainer. And then for me, it's like, I just look at it as a challenge. Like, how can we go out and we can tackle this thing and do our part, to help where we can.
Yeah. I think it started out as, like, let's just grow the sport of, like, get people involved in strength sports. And then once we started working with continuing the mission, it just felt deeper than that. And it's evolved into a really cool community of people, and you can use strength sports, right, to do good things. We're not just a bunch of like strong people that lift weights in the gym. Like we all have, our own stories, our own histories. Like we shared this year that we lost one of our athletes to suicide last year. So it's become more than just, lifting weights and throwing weights. It's about using, your strengths for purpose and giving back to the community that you're living in. I mean, we could absolutely, roll in 20 grand from this event, but, from just taking money from people, but we can do something bigger with it. And that's what's more important. And for me, it's about making sure people have a good time, while giving back as well. So,
yeah, I mean, the ultimate evolution of this thing for us is that we can get enough big corporate sponsors where the game is free.
Yeah.
There is no entry fee to come in. It's tough because when you're in the kind of the charity space, the one thing I think we've learned is even though we've kind of built up this rapport with a lot of the folks in the area, like we're still on the outside. Like we're not vets. We never served. So we're still trying to work our connections through that. And that's why I think, again, it goes back to why do we care so much about the product is because we're using our reputation and Susie's reputation as currency to build the next one up. Mm-hmm. If we didn't care or we put a shitty product out, we wouldn't be able to do the things we're allowed to do. So that ultimately, like, that purpose is what kind of drives me, is to not fail and to not tarnish what Susie's built before she had met us, while at the same time, selfishly, is again, we want strongman and the Highland games at the grassroots level to continue to grow and to continue to flourish. But it is that fine line of trying to make everything kind of mesh on this one day to be this great product that ultimately wants to have people come back. And, it's tough. Like, we didn't talk about this, but, the biggest amateur strongman show is the last 2 years has been the exact same day as our thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you talk about what makes our product different, that ultimately has been the thing. Like, now, again, by us doing it the way we've done it, we're not competing for athletes, but a lot of times for volunteers, a lot of the people that go and compete are our volunteers. So, we're really looking at, like, what are the ways we can do what we can do with a skeleton crew, to put on the best product possible. And,
Yeah, this event is, for me, it's more than strength sports. And I know that a lot of games aren't necessarily like that, but our event specifically, it's about community. It's about building relationships and taking care of the people around you. So for me, that's really from what I see. Like, I want people to be happy. I want them to enjoy themselves, and I want us to be able to give back, through being strong and using strength sports. So.
Yeah. And I think too, is I remember specifically at your guys' games that we did last year, like something that I stole from you guys. It was basically like you guys as athletic directors asking athletes, what can I do to help? And I think far too long, there's athletic directors, you're using the backs of your volunteers or you're using the backs of your athletes, and you're never saying, hey man, let me jump in. How can I make this thing better for you in the real time?
Yeah.
That to me is a thing that I took away from that game. It's like, man, like these guys have a lot of logistical things to worry about, but the number one question they're asking everyone is, how can I help you? And that's the one thing I've tried to walk into, this games especially, is walk around to the judges, man, how can I help? What do you need? Do you need to go eat? Like, I'll run backside of any of this stuff. Just let me know. And a lot of times, like, I volunteered at enough shows and enough strongman things. It's like, people don't give a shit. Like, when you're volunteering, you're going to get pooed on. And it's like, that's the one thing we try not to do, or we're at least transparent. Like, you're going to work really hard, but we're going to do the best we can by you, to at least make it seem like we're not out just, like we're Scrooge McDuck and we go home at the end of the day and we swim in all our coins.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. Like,
the Scrooge McDuck thing?
No, like
it's physically impossible. The coins would be too heavy.
We try really hard to make sure our volunteers come back also, right? Like, we get a lot of the same volunteers that will come back every year and help us, which has really been awesome, because they also believe in what we're doing and they feel appreciated, which is something we try to make sure they know that as well.
Yeah, I mean, athlete numbers aside, that is a very good metric of, hey, we're doing a good job, because volunteers are hard as shit to find.
Yeah. And we've been able to keep over 50 pretty much. The last 3 years or so, we'll get at least 50 people will volunteer. And people randomly will sign up, and they don't even know what Strongman or Highland Games is till they get there that day, and then we have to kind of shift and put them somewhere else. But yeah.
Bring like 10 of those with you in September. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Throw them in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Whatever you do. Well, that's awesome, guys. That's everything I had. So if you guys have any note at the end or anything you want to say about holiday or anything you've got going on, the floor is yours, but I am out of shit to talk about.
One other event that we do here locally in Fayetteville is the All-American Tattoo Convention.
All right.
Yeah, we started that 2 years ago. And so it's deadlift and bench pressing, but this year we're shifting to strongman, do a little bit more of that. So we'll have, it's called Strongest at the Sideshow, coming up at the All-American Tattoo Convention, April 12th. I believe it's that Saturday.
Nice.
That the tattoo convention is like $25 to get in for the entire weekend. You can get tattooed real time. There's over 300 vendors, like tattooists there, artists that are there. So it's a really good time. You can come in, enjoy the convention, and then also lift some weights and have a good time. And that's also for charity. The money goes to the Bobby Henline Foundation, which is a military veteran-owned organization, and then continuing the mission also. So,
Awesome.
strength sports for purpose. That's what we do.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Come back anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right,
Your
y'all.
mustache looks great.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that chat with the Danzers. We will be rolling into the Ted VanVleck interview here shortly. Just your friendly reminder, go on either goandrogue.com or Heavy Athlete and stay up to date on everything that is involved with the Blue Ridge Championship and the Woodridge Farm Highland Games. Thanks, guys, and enjoy. I mostly just wanted to talk to as many ADs as I could and kind of figure out, or not figure out, but remind people of some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on that they may forget about, or things they never knew about, or whatever else kind of comes up. So, pull back the curtain a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see, but a little bit of background, if I'm reading your bio right. So you've been throwing since '94?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes,
And then still very active. And so you recently ended up taking over all the lightweight championships pretty much.
I am the president of the Scottish Masters Athletics International. So I work with our board, and we find locations to host the Masters World Championships every year. And then our website is now hosting the lightweight open class records and helping with their rankings to get qualified and invited to nationals and worlds. And then this year took over for the lightweight women. So between Masters, open women, and open men lightweights, we do help coordinate the qualifications and invites for all of their championships, and really just trying to grow the site to host anything for any of the classes to become that one-stop shop. I think, I started throwing in '94, and back then we had NASGA, and they had a message board. I would go home, Kurt Pauley and them would encourage all the ADs to put their games in prior to Christmas, and my brother and I would, after Christmas, sit around and plan our season. You could look at a specific month. You could look at a specific state. If you were taking a family vacation to Colorado in September, you could look that up and see that, Estes Park is the weekend you're going to be there, and find games. And then I had two boys, and they got into sports, and I got away from the sport for a while. And when I came back, Facebook had taken over. And as I tried to find games, I had to join about 25 different groups. And then I had to post every time I wanted to know where their games were. And somebody would repost the same post that somebody had made months ago. And it was a little frustrating for me because it seemed like with technology, we had taken a step back. And so with our website, I'm really just trying to offer it for everybody to use again, so that we can find those locations. What I try not to do is take away from the other pages and what they accomplish, but am trying to be a source to at least get somebody pointed to the right folks in the right direction.
Yeah. No, that's good. And that's a great point about Facebook. How we ever ended up using that to organize most of these festivals and games is a mystery to me, because it doesn't make any sense in the world. You can't find anything or search anything in any sort of logistical way that makes sense. It's a hot mess. So, but as far as kind of the things, the boilerplate questions I was asking everyone. So how long ago was the first game that you actually had a hand in running?
I don't know the year, but it was in the '90s, and I helped my brother AD games in Kirksville, Missouri, that is still running. Last year was their 30th year hosting that games.
Awesome.
So, and it's grown from having a pro men's class to having over 100 athletes to being held, during COVID at a church. So it's had all different facets of running, but it was fun because I think for a lot of folks that try to run a backyard games or take something on, you go around and you find things that you like about different locations or different parts of the country, and then they kind of mold you into the AD that you become. but yeah, I think that was the first one, and then over time hosted things from backyard games to just helping coordinate an AD or kind of put together an AD by committee so that I did not need to run anything. I think anyone that I honestly discourage somebody just a year or two into the sport from taking on being an athletic director, because everyone wants to give back immediately, and I think that's what's great about the sport. But at the same time, it can beat you down, and ads do a thankless job. I mean, we all thank them, but they don't get paid enough for all the time they put in, and depending on how, I mean, the complaints are exponential as you add more athletes to the mix, and or different countries to the mix, and it can beat you down and discourage you from going forward in the sport. But at the same time, it's fun, and it allows you to respect the ads more, and understand what all they go through to allow you to go out there on a weekend after you've spent all week at work and play in the sun with your friends.
Yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice for sure. God love anybody that does this 10 years in, much less 2 years in. That would be insane. How would you compare kind of those games that you first started being a part of from a director standpoint to the games that you're running now, like throughout 2024? How have things changed or evolved?
The number of classes,
Yeah.
by far. And, it's funny, though, at the same time, I think we overcomplicate it the way there's these standard classes we have. And I think something I've got a private athletic director group with Scottish Masters that I'll share topics that we discuss as a board, or things that I want to try to get out. But when I started, there were amateurs. I mean, I actually started before there was a master's class.
Yeah.
That there was amateurs and lightweights and women, and there wasn't any of the master classes. And now I can go to a games and there might be a master's 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 plus men.
Yeah.
Same for the women. Sometimes 2, maybe 3 lightweight classes, and actually less amateur classes. That I remember competing in St. Louis, and I was in the A class, but there was a Super A class, an A, B, C, and a D class, just because of the number of throwers. But a lot of those were masters before, because we didn't have a master's class. But I think as an athletic director, trying to find trophies, trying to find judges, trying to put your groups together.
Mm-hmm.
To coordinate that whenever you can sometimes have people representing 15 or 20 classes. And that's also why we've kind of evolved the rules or the misconceptions of you needing so many people to have a class.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get sidetracked there. That's why we went into utilizing heavy athlete, because it allows, if a game's set up to have people sign up for their games on heavy athlete, they can create flights. Mm-hmm. So I'm a 40, well, soon to be a 50 plus lightweight, but if there's, 2 open men lightweight, 2 40 to 44, 1 45 to 49, and 3 50 plus, an AD can just click on all of us and put us in a lightweight flight. And when they enter in the scores, they all go to our respective classes, but he doesn't have to mess with it, or she doesn't have to mess with it. And a lot of what we're doing with heavy athlete is try to make it easier for athletic directors to accommodate the demand of today's throwers without putting more on their plate.
Yeah, no, which is a great way to put that. And I keep trying to encourage people to go actually listen to Mike talk about that, because he can articulate it better than I can, for sure. I mean, I've been really loud about heavy athlete, but my actual level of participation is incredibly low. So like what you guys have been able to pull off with organizing that is fantastic. So I'm happy to go on that tangent any day. I've got nothing but time.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great point that no one else had brought up, is the way that has all evolved throughout the games and the logistical issues that causes for ADs. But
well, and I think that also what I had that athletic director group, but I also have a throwing group of private throwers that kind of represent or have impact, or folks in their groups listen to them, because I think it's important. as an athletic director, I'm a lightweight. I mean, I go to the world championships as a lightweight thrower. But if I'm going to go up and throw it at a games up there in your area, I can weigh in on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on where the athletic director lives, where the games is, I always, as soon as before I register, I'll contact the athletic director and ask, can I weigh in on Friday?
Yeah.
If I don't want to put him out or her out if they can't, they don't have somebody designated to weigh me in, or if they're not going to be at the field Friday night, then I just sign up as an open master.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that important to me to put out an athletic director or to cause him another layer of grief. And I think that's something I try to encourage other athletes to do, is to be accommodating. Check if you're a 60+ thrower, check to see if he's going to have the weights, and if he or she doesn't, could you bring your weights
Mm-hmm.
so that you can throw them? If they say no, then go throw their weights or choose not to go. But I think just that simple conversation or email or text message, Facebook message up front goes a long way with just, and plus it allows that athletic director to understand what demands he has in his area, to where the following year maybe he does try to accommodate.
Yeah, no, 100% on all of that. And then the sooner people do that, the better. Because I'm happy to make whatever accommodations I need to, but there's not a lot I can do about it the Thursday before the game if this has suddenly become an
Right.
issue to someone. But if you're letting me know 3 weeks in advance, sure, I can bring scales to places or try and find weights if you don't have weights, or do a lot of things a month ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
and most importantly, it's just all I'm doing is asking the question. I'm not demanding. I'm not expecting. I mean, that's the tough thing with today's society, is the expectation.
well, that was part of why I wanted to kind of do this episode, because I think some people have reasonable expectations that are being let down, and I think there are other athletes out there who have got unreasonable expectations that are wanting a certain kind of treatment that isn't possible, or they just don't understand all the things that go on behind the scenes with running a game. So I wanted to get as many people on a couple episodes as I could that run games to kind of try and break that down, because some people may realize that they're being unreasonable, or they may have just been poorly informed, and the things they're complaining about, they didn't realize why they're happening that way. You know? So.
Yeah, I think, there's just so many different layers as an athletic director. Are you part of a festival? And if you are, how much control do you have?
Mm-hmm.
I've helped AD or been the AD with festivals where the festival director shrinks the field every year, or doesn't allow you access to the field till a certain time. I mean, just it makes it difficult on you. Or, if it's a backyard game, how much funding do you have? Are you getting a grant from the Chamber of Commerce? Or deals on shirts, or getting some folks with food to donate free food to provide, or get water, anything for the athletes. Like, the athletic director, is he having to work till 6 p.m. on Friday? Does he have good judges? Does he have a good group of volunteers around him? There's just so many different layers that in the end, everything points to the athletic director of how well that game's ran. But so I feel like I've been an athletic director and had control over 90% of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been an athletic director and had control over 10%.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that until you've ran it, or until you've seen, the little things that occur, you don't know how little or how much the athletic director was able to, bring to that games to give you that experience that you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to be really cynical and say that, hey, if you're somewhere that only gives you a certain amount of control, just tell the venue no. But sometimes that might be the only festival that whole year in that area, and you got to make concessions where you can, So.
Well, and I don't want to get away from what questions you have next, but I think that a big part of festival or backyard games is, if you sit there and you have 50 athletes or 100 athletes, a percentage of them love throwing at a Ren Fair. A percentage of them love throwing at an actual festival. A percentage of them would prefer to just be at an athletics only,
Mm-hmm.
A backyard type games. A percentage of them, would love to only throw 7 events instead of all 9. A percent of them would not want to throw sheaf. You can't sit there and have 50 or 100 athletes coming and do something that is going to make all of them happy. So there's I'm part of the North Texas Silverbacks here, and there's 4 or 5 of us that could go to a games, and it's my favorite, and it's the other guy's least favorite of the year. And we go to another one, and he loved it, and I didn't, because we all enjoy different aspects of the experience. I even, just little things like the opening ceremony. I really, as a master's athlete with the number of surgeries I've had, I actually don't go to certain games that if they're gonna stop the competition and I'm gonna take an hour off, I can't come back and throw. I can't do it anymore with my back. And so starting a games off with the opening ceremonies, ending the game with the closing ceremonies is something that is very important to me. And 90% of the other athletes could care less. Or if I were going to be served lunch, I'd like to take a working lunch. I don't want to take a lunch break. But others love it, because that's whenever we, like you and I, we might, text or something like that all year, but we're not going to see each other. But that one game, maybe we do want to take a lunch break to be able to visit and catch up on family and friends. But there's certain things that an athletic director does, because as an athletic director, whenever they were an athlete or they went to other games, they liked that this happened there, and they do it. But it's almost like politics. You're still going to have half the folks not like it, even though in your mind you took extra time to do that, to provide that to the athletes, and you still, half of them didn't appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I'll get us back on the scripted question, so we can keep it moving since you just got up. So how many games? Actually, no. Let me back up. We started with how have some of the games changed over the years. Is there anything that you've tried to keep the same? Anything that's kind of stuck with you from the early years that you've focused on keeping?
Well, as a master's athlete, it doesn't matter to me as much, but I find it odd when I came back. So I took about 12 years off. I had 2 boys, and they got into sports, and my work was a lot of hours, so I couldn't do both. And I would, when I took those 12 years, I probably threw, and over 12 years, I threw 3 or 4 times, every other year or so. And it was just because I happened to be back home or on vacation when my brother was doing a competition, so I'd go with him, but, didn't practice or anything. So when I came back, I found it interesting when I started seeing people say that they had a B class throw or an A class throw. Whenever I would register in the early 90s, I'm from Missouri, and there were some really good throwers on one side of the state. And whenever I threw over there, I was actually a B class. Now I'd win a lot of them, but if I threw A's, I was dead last. Whereas if I was on the other side of the state, I would be put in the A class, and I'd be middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And the ebb and flow of where the quality of throwers are is constantly changing. And I don't understand somebody saying that they're a C thrower or B thrower. It depends on where the game is. I mean, if you look at somebody in the A class at a games, they might be ranked 120th on NASGA, and they are an A class thrower at that game. But if the top 20 guys or top 30 guys on NASGA came to that game, they would need to be in the C class.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was always, I want a C class, I want a B class. I never got to win an A class, but it was important to me. I wanted to compete in the highest class I could, so that I could get better and throw against guys better than me, so I could learn something. But I don't understand today more than ever. People say that their throws are an A throw or a B throw or C throw, and I think unless you're in the top 10, you might not be able to throw in the A class at a games if all of those folks came to the same one.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it, because I had always taken that other approach of, I looked at basically their ranking, and that was kind of just drew a line in the sand of, hey, everyone below X number of points is a B class thrower, and everyone below X number of points is a C class thrower. I never thought of looking at game by game. Well,
because the athletic directors back in the areas that I threw in, if you had 24 guys sign up as amateurs, you had 8 in the A class, 8 in the B, and 8 in the C. Now go to games and you'll have, 4 in the A class, 12 in the B class, and 6 in the C class, because they registered for those classes.
Yeah.
And then as a judge, it's also a little frustrating. You know, if you're the judge getting paid the same amount of money or not getting paid to have 12 guys, and this guy's getting paid for 4. But it just, you know, if there's 30 people, there should be 10 in 3. If there was 18 people, maybe there should just be an A and a B class and have 9 and 9.
Yeah.
But I think that's why, you know, a lot of what working with Mike with heavy athlete is, I think that allows an AD to decide, and that's how he figures out how many trophies he needs, how many judges he needs, that he can create those flights. But you know, if there's 30 masters throwers and only 18 amateurs, then you know they shouldn't list they're going to have an A, B, and C class. They just should list they're going to have amateur classes. And with 18 people, you have an A and a B class this time. If you had 38 people, you have an A, B, C, and a D.
Yeah.
And if you only have 8 masters, you have 1 masters class instead of having, you know, heavy athlete will allow all of our scores to go in our 5-year age classes.
Yep.
So, but as far as trophies, if there's only 6 or 8 masters sign up, then you should only have 1 masters class. And I think I'd rather see games, you know, just say, hey, well, here's a games. And if you want a class, like as a master's lightweight, I have our master's lightweight throwers that are somewhat close to me. And I do try to find a game every year to where we all text and say, hey, can we try to show up at this? Get with the athletic director in advance and say, hey, if I get 7 guys, could we have a master's lightweight? You know, find somebody to be able to do that so that we can have a competition that kind of helps us set up for the world championships.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool way of looking at it. I'm going to ponder that a lot because I think that could be a very interesting way to divvy it up. And like you said, with heavy athlete having the ability to designate flights that are separate of everything else makes it very doable. So
Yeah.
So what is something, and you touched on it already a little bit, but like something you wish that more athletes knew about what goes into running a game?
I think two pieces, and I touched on both of them, is one, understanding, and this is really the biggest lesson I've learned taking over Scottish Masters. I kept the board because I did not want to run SMAI Ted's way, because I learned very quickly that things that are important to me, like opening ceremonies and not taking lunches, it doesn't matter to everybody, or what matters to them doesn't matter to me. And so I want, you know, I'm certainly not doing this for the money. So taking on this and putting in all this time away from my wife and family, I want to make sure that I'm providing a product that the athletes want. And, you know, whether that's improving trophies, you know, a swag bag, whatever it is, nicer shirts, I'm trying to do what's in it for them. But I think athletes understanding that what's important to them, I think they would be surprised to realize how what's important to them doesn't matter to every other athlete. As much as they might talk to their little circle, and if you bring something up, you know, with your group of buddies, you all agree on it. But if you really ask them, they don't really care. But what they care about you, I mean, it's no different than with your spouse, or, you know, trying to figure out where you're going to go eat as a family.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have athletes that don't want to lunch at all because they don't eat until after they compete. They don't want heavy, you know, they don't want heavy foods. They don't, whatever it is. And so I think athletes understanding that an athletic director does a lot of things to try to, for the majority of the athletes, but they're going to put a lot of effort into things that won't add value to you, but appreciating that they're doing it for the whole of the group.
Yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice. I think getting people to kind of step outside of themselves could definitely make a difference. Is there anything that you're seeing in the sport? And the answer to this may be no. But from an athletic director side, any trends that you're seeing or things that have been going on for a while that just kind of need to change? I mean, aside from Facebook, can we all please, for the love of God, stop running events solely on Facebook? Like,
I think, I don't know that I have, I mean, I should have my finger on the pulse pretty good across the world, but I think one thing I don't like is new games popping up and taking away from established games.
Okay.
I think that you kind of have your circuit, if you will. If you're an established thrower, for me, my wife will compete in 20 games a year. I think 22. Whereas I did 4 last year, but it's because I'm old and I can't get my body ready that many times. But you have, I can't do more than a game a month. I certainly can't do back-to-back weekends. And so sometimes you might, have a festival that, you're pulling in 80, 90 athletes, and then all of a sudden 2 new people want to start a games, and they have a games 2 hours away the weekend before and 45 minutes away a weekend after. And then all of a sudden you've got 60 people. Well, that, we've had festivals stop having athletics because the folks came down, because not everyone can afford or get the time off to travel to do all of those. And you kind of saturate a market.
Yeah.
My that games in Kirksville, for example, got up over 100 athletes for 2 or 3 years in a row. And then all of a sudden, all these backyard games came up, within a 6-week window, and just dropped down to 50. And we, he couldn't afford to stay at the fairgrounds, and we had to move to another location. And so I don't think we realize we're wanting to get back. And there's a lot of people that are willing to go to, or can go to 15 or 20 games, but there's a lot of folks that can't. And you pull away. We've lost another festival this year, and I feel like a big part of that is because of the saturation of the market in that specific area that pulls away. You're always going to get 5 or 10% of athletes that travel from states away because everyone wants to try to go do a new games. I've been trying to get up there to the No Fame games and do a games that you've never done before. But for the most part, with time off with work and family, and just if you're an athlete that's trying to peak for a national or a world championship, you've got X number of games to do. And whenever you throw in 2 or 3 new little pop-up games, whether it's just for fun or whatever, you pull away from the head count, and that money pays for the judges, gives back to the festival. It does all these things. And I don't think folks realize that can cause some issues.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think it's a complex issue. I think sometimes athlete registrations are dropping off and new games are popping up because you have some ADs that aren't doing their jobs well, I think is the unfortunate side of it too. So I don't want to, but I think you can have both. I think it's nuanced,
Yeah. And I mean, that's a good point. But to me, and I say it just, I've said it like this for years. An athletic director gives me the ability as a grown man to go out on the weekends and play in the sun with my friends, and us talk trash and plan a road trip with my wife, things like that. And so I don't feel like there should be any expectations of them. But on the other side of it, I just went to a games, and I'll just say in the last few years that I've tried 3 times now, and each time there's very little effort to make it an athlete friendly games. So I'm not going to go back. And so yeah, to me it should be the athlete choosing. The number of folks that register then shows them. But I don't ever like to complain about an athletic director, because at the end of the day, they're certainly giving their time for me to be able to go out and throw. But I choose to go to the games I go to because, if it, kind of goes back to what's important for me. Not throwing uphill is important. I'm trying to qualify. Having, I love half-inch handles. I enjoy throwing hammers, an event that I'm good at, and I grew up. My style, I can throw a half-inch handle on a heavy hammer. My PR is just over 5 feet further with a half-inch. Well, there's not very many half-inch heavy handles, but in the Midwest, it's more common. And so I know those games that throw these implements. This wob here, these hammers here, these weights here, the flyers. Starting on time. Again, my warm up. I've had 9 surgeries, and I got to I can warm up my body one time.
Yeah.
And I know games that I go to that will never start at 9. But if I do go there, then I don't even go to the field at 8 like you should, because I know that this guy in the last 15 years has never started at 9, so I can start warming up at this time. I mean, you learn all those things, but I think that just goes back to an AD could do 80 things and still not make all the athletes happy, but it's finding out that if you have the same 50 athletes every year, what makes 80% of them happy, and focus on making those athletic friendly games.
Yeah, 100%. We had someone submit a question of what is a piece of advice you would give to someone who just went pro, to some new pro who's trying to get invites or trying to get into games. Is there a little bit of advice you'd throw their way?
Yeah, I think it's networking. Again, I grew up starting when you had UHA. I mean, my first year throwing, my brother and I would watch the pros throw on ESPN2. But they had a specific circuit. There wasn't as many pros as there are today. There were not as many pro games. They had those specific games they went to. Today, like it goes back to that athletic director. If he gets a grant, like my brother would get money from the Chamber of Commerce, and that's how he was able to afford having pro men for a few years. So I think a lot of it's networking and realizing that it's not necessarily how far you're throwing. I mean, a crowd isn't going to know a pro throwing a 50-foot open stone compared to a 45-foot, but they're going to notice after letting out that grunt, or doing the jumping splits in the air, a cartwheel. It's putting on a show. Going around and shaking hands and talking to the kids. As an athletic director, if they're paying you money to come, that you're performing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I want you to come there and have PRs and do your best and place on the podium and get a trophy. But I also want you to engage in the crowd and shake hands and kiss babies and like for me, I always remember Carrie Overfelt always had the brightest socks and would jump up and do things like that, or just seeing somebody massive like Dan McKim or John Van Buren. Just his presence was impressive. But I think as a pro, it's about networking and finding those ADs that know that if they invite you, you're going to come and give them their money's worth. I think realizing that you're not making a living at this, but you're getting sometimes a lot of money to come and making sure that athletic director is getting his money's worth.
Yeah, great piece of advice. This one may or may not pertain to you, but somebody asked, why do scores take so long to get put in?
Well, I think that's something that I'm pretty proud and impressed with what Mike's done with Heavy Athlete. It's NASCA was very cumbersome, and it was just because it was. I think that's something too. I love NASCA.
Yeah.
But that was 1994, that was the go-to, and they created that, and it was perfect at the time. But I think as everyone went to Facebook, everyone stopped giving money, just like Wikipedia or anything else. It takes money. And Kurt Pauly and them used to get money from all of us to maintain the message board. I mean, they would have on the message board, the pros had their workouts on there, and you could see how many times a week they were throwing, what time of weights they were lifting. There was tons of great information on there. But then as we went to social media, nobody's giving money. They don't add the new classes. They don't upgrade anything. And so you're looking at, how fast technology grows. It's just older technology. And, whenever I was trying to find something when I took over SMAI, NASCA was the first place I went to, was to try to take that over from them. But they, it had started with Kurt, and he wanted it to end with him. And I respected that. But if I had taken it over, I didn't want to change the name or anything, because that's nostalgic to me. It was my preference. But I went with Heavy Athlete because when I talked to Mike, he was just like, give me everything you want. I'm doing this for you. And so we added things to make it easier. And so as an athletic director, you go into NASCA, and I've got to sit there and go to the 45 to 49 lightweight to put in TED scores. And then I've got to go to, even though I had a 40 to 49 class, I got to break it up to 40 to 44. I got to break it up. And then there's, for my name alone, there's like 5 different spellings in NASCA. So for Heavy Athlete, you create a profile, especially if you have a unique name, and you don't have 3 misspellings of your last name,
Yep.
or you don't have, as a Robert, you don't have a Robert, a Rob, a Bob, and a Bobby. You just, whenever you register, your name's already in there, so the athletic director doesn't have to put in a name. He doesn't have to go to your weight class or your age group, or your amateur class. Your profile shows what class you're in, and he just enters in the scores and he's done. But a group of 80 throwers, can take an hour, 2 hours, and after an athletic director has spent the last month or the last 2 weeks, especially the last 72 hours, working nonstop, and then he immediately goes to work on Monday. It's finding the time to sit down, because if you sit down and put in one class, you get pummeled with everybody so an athletic director more times than not is going to wait till they can put the whole thing in, because I get bothered more if I try to just do a class every day.
Yeah.
Than if I just do them all at once, so that I make everybody happy at once. But I think you'll find if you set up to have your games register, your athletes register through Heavy Athlete, all you got to do is go in and put in the scores. I mean, it cuts the time, I think, 70-80%.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the scores get put in there a lot faster. And then a lot of what Mike's doing is with live scoring now. You'll be able to put those in real time, and you'll see the results done by the end of the day.
Yeah, you can watch it as it goes. And then what's nice, too, is being able to pre-plan those flights and everything out, too. So I can shut my registration down a week and a half out from the game and then start sorting everyone to where they go. Like if I had a lot of Masters register, okay, now I can afford to have an extra judge, and I can now split them up in there. We'll have the below 50s throw over here and above, or however the AD wants to do it. But
yes,
doing that ahead of time, and then all I've got to do is just go straight down the list, or have Mike do it day of, just pay him to come out and do live scoring, and everything's done. It's just entered and we're finished. It's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no complaints at all. Well, the final question, man, is just why do you do it?
I grew up playing sports, and then life happens, and there's not a reason to go to the gym. There's not a reason. I missed the competition, and what I love about the Highland Games is there's so many unique games. There's so many different locations. You can tie it into trips. I've got to throw in Santiago, Chile, and Germany and Switzerland, and all these, got invited to Australia, and all these different places that you can plan vacations around a competition. But as you get older, it just, it gives you a reason to stay in shape. It gives you a reason, to compete, and you get to spend the day outside. And I think I played a lot of team sports, and with throwing, I might throw 10 feet further in a hammer distance because it's slightly downhill, or it's because it's a different type of handle or a different implement. But on that field, all of us in my class are throwing the same weight in the same conditions, and the tape measure doesn't lie.
Yep.
And there's just nothing better to me than if I spent more time in the gym than I normally do, or more time practicing, and I go out and I see the reward of that. There's just not a better feeling. And then being an athletic director or taking over SMAI is just because, my brother's a lot older than me, and we didn't grow up being that close. Mostly my fault. I was pretty irritating, but the sport, made him my best friend, and then the sport brought me my wife. So I think that for me, giving back is for that reason, is how much the sport's given me with her and my brother's relationship, and just, if I sit there and looked at being in a really bad spot and I had to call 10 people, probably 8 of them came from the Highland Games.
Yeah.
So just the friendships, the fellowship, the relationships, everything. I don't know. I love it.
Well, that's fantastic, man. I won't even follow up, because that's the most wholesome note we could possibly end on. And if I talk too much, I'll derail it monumentally. So thank you so much for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. There we go. Now we're live, and no one can see your living space. Isn't that
Yay!
nice?
Very nice. Thank you.
So, the brief background that I'm telling everyone is I wanted to just get a whole bunch of ADs onto a couple episodes.
Okay.
So that one, we could just give people background, and just be mildly educational, but also to kind of either remind seasoned athletes of things that we tend to forget and or take for granted,
Okay.
or educate new athletes on things they may not know about what happens behind the scenes. Right? I think it's good information to have.
Okay.
So, because, I mean, there's, Lord knows at any given moment, so much bitching on any of the Facebook groups about anything. So,
Because that accomplishes a lot.
and so does this. This is really fixing everything.
You never know.
Exactly. So, first off is like your brief bio line. You're Alex. You run the majority of Massa games, or at least in some form or fashion, are highly affiliated with them. Whether it's you running them or someone else, right? Is that
Yeah,
fair to?
Yeah, I run almost all of them, and I'm starting to delegate some of them out. But yeah, I do all the administrative stuff for it.
So, when was the first game that you were ever affiliated with running?
With running, I don't know. I've been working for what is now Massa since 95 or 96.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
A good little while. And then most recently would probably be what? VSG? It's the last one you were involved with?
Um,
Or no, there was
there
something.
was one in October.
Harper's Ferry?
I didn't do Harper's Ferry, but I did another game in October. I can't even remember. They're all blurring together at this point.
You came to my games in October.
I did.
Um,
Thought
Yeah, there was no Richmond.
no Richmond.
Yeah, womp womp.
Maybe
So-
not.
I'm still undefeated. Anyway,
You hold on to that.
as long as they don't bring it back, I can just claim multiple years of being undefeated in Richmond. That's fine.
If that's what you're clinging to, Jeremy.
I don't have a lot, so, but okay. So, doing this since the mid '90s, how have you seen things from the AD perspective or the sport as a whole evolve and change from then until now?
It's gone from chaotic to being a lot more organized. When I started working for Mac, he would show up with equipment and some blank score sheets, and whoever showed up could throw. And that was about how we ran it. And now, we have online registration, which we're moving to a new platform, obviously. We have classes, we have flights. It's not just whoever shows up throws. You now have weights that are different between classes, which is different than what we had before. When you showed up before, you threw whatever you were given. There wasn't much of a choice. So it's a lot more organized than it was.
Good. That's always good to hear. Anything on the negative side that has changed? Is there a double edge to that?
I will say that because you set standards, people have started complaining and whining more.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But that means you also have something for them to compare themselves against. You have something for them to complain about other than just showing up and throwing for fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
yeah.
So, I, of course, forgot my entire thing where I'd written down all my questions, so we're just going to wing it throughout most of these. I'm doing great. Look, I bring my forms for you, so I'm...
Yes, you do.
I'm learning. Season 2 of this will be a whole new world. You'll have to tell me how you changed your background so I can tell other guests that they can change their background.
The magic wand.
That's what I'm telling you. But it looks kind of like a cigarette, right? It's weirdly proportioned.
It's a magic wand.
Yeah, it's a magic wand. So, all right. Been running a lot of games. Covered that. What about... Is there anything that you just blanket statement wish that athletes knew? Like, is there a common question or a common misconception or something that you hear that you kind of wish you could just get everyone on the same page?
It's not all about you. I mean, it's not you. Yeah, Jeremy, is definitely not
How dare
all about
you.
you. No, but you know what I mean. It is about the athletes as a whole. It's not about any one athlete. I don't care who's on the field. We're all contributing to it. You all need to be a part of it because you are all a part of it. You're there as entertainment. Don't forget that. You need to interact with the audience and not just be wandering around doing your own thing instead of actually helping people understand what the sport is. Because if people don't understand it, they won't come back and watch it again.
Yeah. Some of them are coming back to me now. So what do you think Massa does differently, if anything, from kind of some of the surrounding games? Because for those that don't know, you operate, Pennsylvania all the way down to Virginia, right? So Pennsylvania, one in Ohio now, again, if I'm not wrong? Or
Not active in Ohio at the moment. We may be helping out with Ohio. But we figure we cover West Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We haven't done one in Kentucky for a long time.
Dang it, KO.
Yeah. Right. But you know what? That's good because you've got a thrower who knows what's going on and it can actually take care of people as an AD. Yeah, and some in Ohio, but it's been a bit. So that's about where we cover.
Yeah, so what if anything is Massa doing differently than, say, Shag or KO or any of the surrounding area games or even nationwide? Like, is there anything?
I don't know that there's anything so much that we do differently. It's everybody has little quirks. I'm not doing wing trigs. I mean, that's one thing we're doing differently than some other places.
Wow.
There's no trig behind you. I think part of what Massa doesn't do is, unfortunately, we don't do a lot of getting corporate sponsors to come in and sponsor stuff, which is unfortunate. But I spend a lot of my time doing other things, including running a festival on top of, a large festival on top of everything else. I think one of the things that we haven't done that I would like to do is get a coaches clinic going and have a throwers clinic at the same time and get some more coaches through and I was going to say it's not the right way, but taught at least from a different perspective than the other groups. And I don't know that
in accordance with the way you want people to show up at your game,
Yeah, definitely.
Which is fair. Speaking of sponsorships, that's something I actually hadn't touched on at all yet. I wish I had thought to ask everyone about that stuff. How do you guys go about dealing with sponsorships then for Massa? I mean, if you're not going corporate, how do the games get paid for?
We get paid for by the festival.
Yeah.
Which is we try to keep our costs to a minimum. But we get paid by the festival, and I don't have, Chad Clark is great at going out and getting people to sponsor on a level. You're pretty good about going out and getting stuff sponsored. And I'm an introvert. I don't like doing that stuff. Talking to you today is more cognizant than I think when I try to go out and sell things. And I have tried in the past to have Chad come on board and do some stuff for ECCs and other things.
Yeah.
BJ Ketchum was going to come on board for a while and do some sponsorship stuff, but it's not panned out. And if anybody actually wants to do that kind of stuff, we're open to it because we could use some more sponsorship.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I end up going 50-50 with my games. There's a base fee that they end up paying me, but it's usually pretty darn low. It's to make sure that I can get you guys paid for as staff, and then everything else I have to go out and try and find. So I like to have what I know I can promise to put on a game of some sort, and then all that other extra fluff of pros and all that other stuff I have to try and find somewhere else or hope it falls into my lap. So it's an interesting back and forth. But then again, I'm also not working with anywhere that's nearly as established as, VSG or Wild and Wonderful, all these games that have been going on for ever. So, what advice would you have for new pros? I think you're probably one of the first people I get to ask this who actually invites pros distinctly to certain games.
Biggest thing is get to know your ADs. If you want to throw somewhere, you need to go there as an amateur and get to know the not just the athletic director but the judges and be on the field and be part of the event. Don't just be there to throw. Be there to talk to people, talk to the crowd, get to know things. I will tell you, I can't pay pros a lot of money, so I'm going to invite people that I know are going to have a good time and are going to be good for the crowd because, they're part of the reason why everybody's there. VSG, pros are the athletics is the centerpiece of VSG. And, I need people on the field that are going to be entertainers.
Yeah.
They need to bring something with them. And they, don't, pardon my language, but don't be an ass.
I think we've said way worse than ass on this podcast.
I'm sure you have.
We have the explicit rating. You can say whatever you want about it. You can name names. I don't care. But
no.
One of the other interesting ones that was from the public is why do scores take so long to go in? I know you love getting bugged by people. Definitely not me. I would never do it.
I am not Josh Beatty. I cannot get scores up within 12 hours. I apologize. One of the big reasons is I won't sit there on the field and go over all of the score sheets. I will, what we give on the field, we give on the field. And then when I get home, they go into the spreadsheet and I double check everybody's scores to make sure that they're scored out correctly. Almost every games I find a mistake. Sometimes I'm the one who made the mistake. Sometimes it's somebody else. Sometimes it's just pure math. And I want to make sure that what we actually post is correct.
Yeah.
And I work a full-time job, so...
Are you telling me you're not making a living doing this?
No, I can't even cover my costs doing this.
So far, no one running games has made significant amounts of money. Isn't that the craziest thing?
Right?
So, that leads me into another good one, which was, if none of us are making money, why are you doing this? Why does Alex Duncan help run games for the last 30 years?
Because it's a good community. I have a lot of friends. The majority of my close friends I know through the games in one way or another.
Yeah.
It gives me a chance to see different places, which I constantly complain I don't see the places. All I see is athletics at the places. But, it is the community. It's the people that I work with, the people that I judge, the people that I hang out with. So.
Yeah. What do you think athletic directors on the whole could be doing better? Are there any trends that you've noticed that are kind of not moving in the right direction in your opinion? If at all. You can also say no, everybody's doing great and you can be all warm and fuzzy.
I'm not going to say everybody's doing great because everybody has their challenges. Everybody has their strong spots. I will say one of the things that frustrates me when I go in and guest judge, say at your games, when I staff a games for every flight, I want to judge a marker and a scorekeeper.
Yeah.
I will make sure that that's what I have. And sometimes it's somebody's spouse. I mean, frequently it's somebody's spouse that's scorekeeping for me. But if you're not properly staffed, then you don't have a judge who's paying 100% attention.
Yeah.
And then stupid things happen. Like, somebody doesn't get called on a blatant foul and, somebody gets annoyed and it just becomes ugly. And I prefer that not happen.
Well, we're all first-year games. We're working on it.
I know.
No, that is one of the priority things that I was going to talk to you some about off the podcast, but we can also do it here. So I'll make the really big announcements and all that stuff after a phone call with the venue on Monday. But Woodridge is going to be a 2-day game next year. Yay. Exciting. They really liked having us. Personal opinion, you as staff coming to my game, is it acceptable to pay out travel money to judges instead of booking you all a hotel? I don't want to leave everyone empty-handed with it being a 2-day game. I want you guys to be taken care of. You think that makes sense?
Sure.
Yeah. I go find a block rate somewhere, and then I just up y'all's pay by $200-ish or something crazy like that.
Yeah, you could do that.
Tell everyone. It's completely unrelated. No one's going to care about that section. They're all going to skip that, and that's fine.
And I will say it happened once this year that we had rooms somewhere, and somebody stayed for one night instead of two, and that came out of the pay for the judges because we had to pay for that night. That's the way it was set up, unfortunately. So I think you may be better off doing that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking too. Just because if some people want to stay at a different hotel or go somewhere else or do whatever, they kind of have a little bit of freedom. Like I'll get my block rate at the nearby hotel and I'll pay what is equivalent of a couple of nights there in travel cost, and
Yeah.
everything comes out in the wash, hopefully, So,
Yeah, because and actually, I will give Southern Maryland as an example. For the longest time, we may have had 2 room nights down there, and Mac was like, "Don't check out, because they won't give us the room again if you check out, and they don't spend the money this year." And I'm like, okay. And part of me thinks that that's a sleazy way to handle it. But on the other hand, I get it, because next year we may have different judges who need 2 room nights. So
how many games every year does Massa run? Do you know?
I
Off the top of your head?
think around 10, 8 or 10.
I mean, that definitely makes you one of, if not the largest athletic organizations in the state, right? I think Matt and I talked last year, and you guys actually were.
Probably.
Is there anything like special challenges that come with running so many games over so many states? I mean, covering that much of a territory, does it make everything exponentially more difficult, or is it a pretty similar formula that you're just applying across the board at all these different games?
There's a lot of stuff that's the same between all of them. I will say it makes having a personal life in the summer very hard.
Yeah.
Because seeing anybody during the summer is difficult outside of the games.
I was gonna say, you could see 40 big sweaty idiots every other weekend, no?
It's so exciting. No, I mean, it is kind of the same, but it depends, where you go, how many flights you have, whether you're traveling 8 hours or it's just an hour in the morning and coming back at night.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 2-day games. So there are different challenges in between. But the basic setup is the same, and that's one of the things we've done with registration is we open registration 4 weeks out on the Thursday so that people all know when to expect registration to open up. And then we also don't have people dropping out last minute or fewer people dropping out last minute.
Yeah.
What on earth are you doing?
I was checking the list of questions that I sent you. It's fine. I'll switch to your screen and no one has to watch me be all weird and sideways. It's all fine. So one that I didn't actually put on that list, but you just kind of brought up, athlete drops. Has it always been the way that it is now where like you get 20 people in a class and inevitably only 15 of them show up? Is that a new thing, an old thing? Does it come in waves? What?
I think it comes in waves. I mean, we set up Massa Games so that we have 15 registered athletes and up to 3 alternates. And we will frequently tell the alternates to show up anyway. One, if they're new athletes, they can shag and they can meet people and figure out who they can train with. But there are also, you have people that are not 99% sure they're not going to show up no matter how many games they register for. And I will say it's frustrating as crap.
Have you found any way to address that, or is it just one of those things that inevitably takes care of itself?
I think that when we raise prices for registering for Massa, it will start to take care of itself better because it's no big deal when it's a $10 registration, but when we hike it up because we're going to have some serious equipment costs coming up in the next couple of years, it's going to cost you. And we don't refund.
Yeah, no one's going to risk a $35 fee, whereas they will throw $10 at the wall.
Yeah.
Maybe they show up, maybe they don't. That's fair. I mean, I'll tell you, I saw people drop out at $45, so I don't know.
Well, it's not going to stop it, but it'll cut it back a bit.
Maybe. That would be good. I hate having ADD because I definitely thought of a thing, and then now it's just gone by the wayside. I remember what it was. So recently, one of the Facebook gripes was people talking about your eternal people who just seem to be comfortable hanging in the middle and never wanting to progress through classes and things like that, which at your games isn't, I don't know if it may not be as much of an issue because Massa just runs open AMs. You guys don't typically do novice or Bs and As and things like that. But you do run the East Coast Championships and things like that. So you do have somewhat of a separation at some games.
Yep.
Do you also see that trend in the sport of have we kind of hit a generational period? And maybe it also is affecting more like your pro class. Because I think when you get these generation gaps, it tends to affect at every level. Where you just don't see a lot of people pushing onto that next level right now. Is that something that you're kind of seeing happen?
Um, we've always had that. I mean, and maybe it's been a Massa thing, but I know that there were a bunch of guys that when I started judging were throwing, and they threw and threw and threw. And, you still see some of Dan Jackson, Tim Ross. I mean, they've been throwing as long as I've been judging, and they're masters now, but they weren't throwing to improve, to do better, to go pro. I think you've got two groups of people. You've got the group of people who just want to throw and go out and do this on the weekends, and it's a hobby for them. And then you've got other guys who go out, guys, and when I say guys, I mean guys and women, who go out and they want to do better week after week, and they're pushing to do better, and they're pushing to either go pro or to be the top in the Masters World Championships in their class or whatever it is. And you're always going to have that. You're going to have some people that this is just something that's fun for them to do.
Yeah. Do you think? I think the main comment on the Facebook thing was kind of that there's currently an imbalance. It seems to some people that right now we have a lot more of the first group of weekend warriors than we do the other thing. How does that end up getting fixed if that ends up being detrimental? I mean, you know as well as anyone, some games are going away, not necessarily by the fault of the athlete, but you need athlete numbers if you're going to continue to have games and things like that. How does that get addressed?
I don't know that it's been a problem for us, and I don't expect it to be a problem. It may be a problem as far as the pro class is concerned. Pro classes there's not, I don't think there's many people going pro because there are not that many pro games anymore.
True.
It gets cut back. We were at 4 a year. Right now we're sitting at 1. If Richmond comes back, we'll go back to 2. But if there are no pro seats out there, where's somebody going to throw? And especially we'll go back to the earlier conversation about going pro and how do you do it. And if you're not going out and meeting ADs, you're not going to get into pro classes unless there's something that is strictly score based. And then you've got to be at the top.
Yeah, you've got to be in the top 10 in the whole U.S. for those games. So
yeah.
That kind of brings up, so dang it, I really wish I had a different brain some days because I'll think of something and then I don't want to interrupt someone, and then by the time it's my turn, it's gone again.
There's a thing called a notepad and a pen, and you can put little notes on it about what you want to ask, and then you can circle back to it.
Right on the back of this Winchester manual. Well, the most me thing I can do. So you mentioned only having like a pro game. Why have pro classes been dwindling or pro opportunities? Maybe not even, let's not even address whether we have pro athletes or not and all that. That's a whole other thing. But why has that opportunity been going away? Is there one cause or is it multiple? Or
it's multiple causes. We've had games that have gone under. We've had games that are getting close to going under, and this is how they can save a chunk of money.
Yeah.
So it could be either. I'm kind of picky about who throws with us because I want people who are going to be good for the crowd. And I think that, going to the pro elite team competition has been good.
Yeah. And you still invite Matt McDougall, wanting people that know.
You talk about people who are good for the crowd. Just
great.
saying.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Do you think that Massa typically going the festival paying for the athletics route could cause some of that? I mean, if let's say you guys could suddenly start drawing in corporate sponsors, do you think that could potentially breathe a little bit of life into some of those pro classes?
If I could draw sponsors that would pay for the pro class, I would have pro classes more places.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, let me rephrase that. I would have pro classes more places that we could have more classes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to eliminate the amateur athlete classes to make room for pros.
That's true. Everything gets exponential because now you need more shirts and more staff and more score sheets and more tapes and more trigs. And yeah, I don't think everyone realizes. Even you talked about registration fees earlier. People will complain about whatever you make the price. I don't think sometimes everyone knows how much money goes into trying to make these happen.
Nope.
Good Lord. Anyway,
and it's not just money; it's time.
It is, and it's time. You don't bill, or I don't bill. I don't know about you, but I mean, good Lord, if I put a dollar amount to the number of hours that I put into
they couldn't afford to pay me to do what I
Oh,
do.
not even a chance. I mean, we're only right now booked for Woodridge next year.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only games on our end, so it's where I'm putting all of my time and hundreds of hours. I mean, we're not even done with this year. The game is next September, and I'm already. It's absolutely insane.
And you wanted to be an ADY?
I thought it'd be fun. I don't know. I wanted to be able to do a few things my way and pick up the little things that I like about your games and the little things I've liked about Josh's games and Chad's games, and just kind of take little bits from everyone and put them all into one thing. I thought it would be, and I wanted to have a game that was purely athlete focused, where we could kind of get away from the strings of festival models and things like that. Like, I really wanted a local game where athletes could just solely go be athletes. Like, all the other stuff is great, and I'm not saying they shouldn't exist. I just wanted to have one little, pocket where that's the thing, So, thought that was fun. And I still stand by it. It's still fun. It's just stressful and time consuming.
It is, and while I appreciate your games, it also becomes frustrating, because then are these games that count towards anything,
Well, Woodridge next year will. So Woodridge, last year even, we had clans and pipes. The only thing we were missing was dancing, and we will have dancing this upcoming year, because they do have a stage near the brewery. So it won't be next to the games field, but I can get the dancers to come do a demo, so that we will, at some point over the weekend, have Highland dancing. We will have pipes. We will have clans.
Good.
And then, so long as I can pay at least $1,500 toward pros, which I'm working on, we'll have met all the things. And then, I'm curious what your take is going to be. Have you paid attention to the Blue Ridge Championship that I said we're going to do up there?
No.
So we've made a whole nother championship, because there aren't enough of them.
And what are your qualifications?
So our qualifications is that for 2025 up until August 1st, we are going to pull amateur rankings for every state the Blue Ridge Mountains runs through. So Pennsylvania down to, I think they actually touched South Carolina, just ever so slightly. So all along that mountain range, we are going to invite, for no registration fee, the top 2 females, top 2 males. Then come through without paying a registration fee in their own championship flight, and we have prize money set aside for them. So we're going to have a little competition for AMs to come potentially make back their travel money if they win and all that sort of stuff.
So top 2 males, top 2 females per state that the Blue Ridge runs through?
So it's 7 states, which puts us at 14. And then there will also be wild cards for the top 1 and 2 from the AM division the year previous. So if you travel from another state, you could get an invite via winning the AMs.
Okay, so it's an event in the 7 states, not if they live in the 7 states.
Yes, correct. Okay. No, it's they have to live in the 7 states and have the top 2 point rankings.
Okay.
So if you were to look at heavy athlete points, because NASCA points don't matter. I don't believe in them anymore. No, but yeah, so as of August 1st, based on heavy athlete rankings, whoever the top 2 ranked amateurs from Virginia, the top 2 ranked amateurs from the Carolinas, from Maryland, from Pennsylvania, all that stuff.
Okay.
Will get invited, and then they can maybe make money and get their name on a nice little trophy and all this fancy stuff. So, yeah, I thought it would be kind of fun to, again, just have like a little athlete-centered thing that was differently. I love ECCs. I can't wait to go again. Golly gee, those flights get out of hand, and I'm like, how do we do something slightly different and not run the risk of having 23 people show up for this game? Like, how do I manage first,
Well, I've got to say, ECCs every year seems to get whittled down the week before the games.
Oh.
And like 3 people that I reach out to confirm with, they're like, oh, I'm not coming.
Well, so I did VSG last year instead of ECCs because of scheduling, and I was like, I also don't want to be somewhere all day, and I was like, let's go throw opens in a class of like 27, and then y'all had like half the people show up.
That's very frustrating when it's a championship. And
it really is. Do you think that if we were to get really introspective for a minute, why do you think that is? Why do people suck?
I think you just answered your own question.
just because people suck. That's fair.
I mean, I honestly don't know because it used to be that ECCs was a stepping point to going
Mhm.
pro. It used to be one of the last games that a lot of people did before they went pro, which was great.
Yeah.
And
But
I
that's
don't.
part of it. If the pro class is dwindling because there aren't as many opportunities, you know,
Hmm.
or it could be an education problem for the newer generation of throwers that just don't understand that. I don't know. Interesting. But anyway, I just figured I'd give people money. I was like, that'll.
I,
I'll just bribe.
hey, you're welcome to give me money anytime you want.
I'm gonna give you money at that game if you're available. It's a part of the plan.
Okay.
So, oh, but yeah. Well, cool. That actually, we ran through. I looked. That was all the questions I sent you, and then some. We ran through them in record time.
Excellent.
Is there anything else on the topic of ADing, just kind of free floating, that you want to share with me, with the world, any of that? This podcast is really whatever I want it to be. So
It's all about you.
I'm going to change the tagline from professional amateurs to all about me.
No, there's nothing really I want to share. I just, when you come out and throw, we'd love to have you throw. And, well, everybody but you, Jeremy, throw in the Massa Games. But just
I know the website. It's fine.
be a good sports person when you come out and throw.
Yeah.
We look forward to having people out. I'm hoping we get some more people out on the field. We had a couple of games this year that were a little low on participation, but hopefully this year they'll get up.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, if we were to give those games a shout out so that people actually go, what was it? What Montpelier? I feel like had a ton of Masters, but not a lot of Opens, right?
I didn't go to Montpelier.
Oh,
So,
well, it didn't even have you. So
no, it didn't even have me. Montpelier's a kind of funky one though, because it's not.
yeah, a weird little field.
Yeah, and it's not even a full games, and it's just a demo sort of thing in the backyard of a
Of a library.
community center. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, I grew up there. I found it really just having one there, but whatever.
I would like to see more people in Harper's Ferry because it's a 2-day games now. And it unfortunately coincided with Masters World Championships last year, so
A little bit.
little rough, a little hard for a 2-day game. But anyway, all of our games are good, and join our Facebook page, and I've got to start as of the first of the year, start getting events up so people know when things are going to be and can know when to sign up for them.
Yeah, and then you guys will be running registration solely on heavy athlete this upcoming year, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, which because then people can have a calendar function and they can just look at all of them wherever they want to. So.
Yeah, sadly our registration crashed, and so we moved over quickly.
Well, hey, isn't it nice that some random dude's brother made that and then now
Yes.
we do that? So awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope I didn't eat up too much of your day and that your fire alarm doesn't go off anymore.
Thank God the fire alarm didn't go off again.
We'll just work through it. It's fine.
It's fine. It's all fine.
Not real. Well, thank you so much. I will see you, I'm sure, very soon.
All right, take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. And there we go. No pressure, but you are going to be the final interview of the AD episode series. So you are literally the last person I'm talking to for the calendar year of 2024. So, yeah, don't fuck it up.
Hey, I'll do my best. No promises, but I'll try.
I mean, a very low bar with the way the rest of this podcast is run, so could be fine. I wanted to kind of give people a look behind the curtain of what maybe their local ADs or ADs and people that run game areas are trying to get to, and remind seasoned athletes of things they may have forgotten, or just educate some new athletes on kind of how things happen and why they happen. So we took a couple of questions off of social media and then just other stuff that I thought was good background info. So that's really just quick little stuff, and then piece it all together and try and put it out there. But so what was the first game you ever had a hand in running? You remember when that was?
It would have been San Diego.
Which in German means sorry, shitty Anchorman reference, but
shit, man. It was probably San Diego 21 or 22 or something. I honestly don't remember exact. I'm pretty sure that was. Oh man, but you know what? I think I did Valkyrie before that.
Okay.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know. The answer is I'm not sure.
but roundabout in that area. I mean, we had some people say the mid '90s, so they could.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
not me, man. I was I was finishing up high school and rounding my way into college in the mid '90s. So lots of really good music though.
Yeah,
really
when I talked to Ted the other day, he said something about 1993, and I was like, brother, I was 2. I don't.
Yeah, Teddy is. I believe Teddy just turned 50. So
yeah.
Happy birthday, Teddy.
Yeah, happy birthday, Ted. This won't come out anywhere near his birthday, and this is going to feel really weird, but whatever.
Happy birthday a long time ago, Ted.
You'll be on the same episode, though. It'll look like you cared, because it'll all just work together. So
that's all that matters.
But
so yeah, I haven't been doing it for that long. I've been part of the games as an athlete for technically 12 years, and I've been running games with the SAAA for probably the better part of the last 3 years, more or less. I think that's probably pretty fair. I've been on the board with the SAAA longer than anyone that's currently on the board right now, and that's mainly just because everyone got chased off and they ran on and have better lives because of it. But
harder and then got out. But
yeah, I'm the only dumb bastard left that's still around. But I've been on the board now, I believe, for about 7 years. So I've had something to do with our games, and our games are just a little bit different. And I think it's kind of important to make this distinction that, when Danny Webster runs the games, Danny does what Danny wants to do. Yeah. When Josh McIntosh runs the games, Josh does what Josh wants to do, as long as his wife's on board. And I can do what I want to do, given that my other 8 board members are on board and cool with what I want to do. And so it's a little bit different animal out here. And it's in some regards it slows you down, but in some regards it keeps you safe, I guess.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's actually great, because you're getting a little ahead of me, because that'll be one of the things that we get to in a question or two about what's different. But so you started 22-ish, maybe somewhere around there. And then what was the most recent game that you ran rounding out 2024?
That would have been Ventura. Me and Johnny O'Neill co-AD'd that one, second weekend of October.
Okay. And then have there been any changes in the way games have been running via the SAAA in those last 3 or 4 years when you've been closer to the head of the ship? I know there's a board and there's all that, but
yeah. I think the biggest changes that have been going on, probably more in terms of just, I feel like we're in the middle of it right now, honestly. But in terms of ticketing the athletes, the different products we've been using, going from Eventbrite to what's it called? Why is it escaping me right now? Iron Podium. Some folks are going to be moving over to the Sports Illustrated product that's been floated out there this last year. I'm looking forward to using the Heavy Athlete next year. Yeah. There's a lot of changes going on there that I think, if everything goes well for Heavy Athlete, I think will be for the better, and it will be a better experience for the athlete. But from the AD perspective, I'm hoping that's going to make my life a little easier too.
It really should. Hopefully,
Yeah, yeah, and so I think really, I guess in the broadest sense of the word, technology is the answer to your word. How do we get athletes to sign up? How do we log in results into what system? That's obviously going to come into focus here in 2025, and things like that. Outside of that, games have more or less been about the same. I think we've done a really good job of improving our awards and making them awards that we would want to win. And that's a big, huge shout out to Amelia and her husband Sal, that do a tremendous job and get us some of the coolest stuff out there. But so yeah, we've got cooler awards. I think that there's a difference now between, I think a lot of people used to do stuff super lazy. I think of it like if you're a realtor and you just want to sell a house and you throw it on the MLS. It's like, okay, I did my job. Now people will come to me. It's like, no, it's not good enough to just go put a games on Facebook, create an event, and just expect people to show up. There's a lot of games out there, and it's expensive to travel, and you've got to do a lot of work to attract quality athletes, attract a good number of athletes, so you can turn hopefully a little profit.
Yeah.
So there's more to that, I think, now than maybe was ever done before. I know I do a lot of that. I want to make sure that I look at the roster from a year ago, and I in every class, why isn't this guy here? Why isn't she coming? I gotta give him a call.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on. Sometimes it's that little difference that will get people to come because they're like, hey, you noticed? You missed me? Like, yeah, I do. And so there's that, but then there's also, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but there's how can you make these games more attractive, and how can you maybe do something to make them a bigger deal that it attracts additional competition. And we're going to be doing a little bit of that this year with some new titles and some things like that. So we can talk about that in a little bit.
Oh yeah, I'd love to, because I'm trying to do the same thing. And any chance I get to talk about myself, I'd love why I started a podcast. So do you think having you've got a board, so that by nature is going to change some things up. So do you think that there's anything different about an SAAA side or an SAAA game compared to maybe some of the ones near you or not so near you that's visible to the athlete, or is that just affecting behind the scenes things? Do you think the product comes out more or less the same, or is there a noticeable difference when they go to your game for whatever reason? I'm assuming good, things you guys try and do, like words.
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference for an SAAA games in general is that we roll with certified judges, and becoming a judge for us is it's not easy. There's an online test that you've got to do. You got to study up. You got to take the test. You've got to pass it with a certain proficiency. After that, you've got to go in and you've got to shadow a certified judge for an entire games, and then you got to go do it again. And the second time you do it, the idea is that you will probably judge every other event. So the main judge does Braemar, you do open. The main judge does heavy, you do lightweight, so on and so forth. Typically, the toughest one is always caber. People are a little scared, and rightfully so. It's a sketchy ass event, and if you don't have eyes on the caber in the hands, you as the judge could take one to the dome real quick. So it's that's definitely something that I feel like everybody, regardless of certification or what part of the country they are in, I hope everybody sits down with their judge and spends some time with them on how to judge caber in the safest way possible. But by the time you are a certified judge with the SAAA, you've already done it several times. You've at least worked with 2 different certified judges. You've passed the test, and you should noticeably give the athletes something a little different than what they experience in other parts of the country. Now, I get it. It's not easy to do that. There's a lot of parts of the country where it's like, hey, you've done this for a while. You know what you're doing. I know you. Come on in. We just happen to run it a little differently. We pull a lot of our judges from up north, which is the SAAA. So that's like the Pleasanton folks and Bakersfield and everything north of Bakersfield, basically in California. We'll pull judges from there sometimes. We pull judges from the Tucson area and Phoenix area. So if you're throwing anywhere in California, if you're throwing, SoCal, Arizona, even Nevada, you're going to see a lot of the similar types of people, similar faces, who are all trained pretty similar. So I think anybody traveling in those necks of the wood, they're not going to feel anything too terribly different. But you go far enough north, you'll start to feel something a little different. The SAAA used to be all over the entire West Coast, so there's still parts of it that they basically broke off and kind of did their own thing. But there's an SAAA Northern Rockies up in Idaho, and they'll do a lot of the games in Alaska. They'll you know, I was there this last year, and they were both at the Palmer games and at Homer. To me, it felt very SAAA-ish because, you know, those vibes are still there. And I think that'll continue for a long time. Those people, you know, most of them are just judging now, and they just love the sport and they want to help push it. But at some point in time, you know, things could switch over. But I think we're doing a good job of getting new judges out there, and hopefully we'll continue to have that good, similar feel. But yeah, when you're on the West Coast, definitely in the Southwest, you're going to feel something a little different. And I think that just comes from the judges and their background.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. I'd never heard of people. I'd never bothered to ask a lot of people. It's part of the reason I'm doing this whole thing of talking with ADs. But you're the first one to mention like having a rigorous process to certify your judges. I know a lot of the places around here will run judging clinics, and you have to attend that shadow, which is it's still something, you know. But so one of the things I always have issues with games, and all of mine are startup games, so that's part of the growing pain. But is finding staff, and then so I'd probably be screwing myself if I said, "Hey, please come judge my first year at this game, and also can you go take this test and shadow these other people and go to these, you know?" So, are these people motivated by pay? Is it because they love the games? I mean, how do you keep those judges doing all this?
You know, I think that there's a couple different things there, but you know, I do a lot of stuff for the SAAA, but by no means can I do it all on my own. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And so really the number one thing you got to have to start out the gate is you've got to have a group of people that are loyal and really care about the games.
Yeah.
We've got some people who are just amazing. And if you're watching Lindsay, I'm thinking about you and your family right now, you and John. Just this family that, you know, one of the kids is my scorekeeper. One of the kids is a lightweight athlete. The mother is an A competitor. The father helps set up all of our equipment. Will take home stuff that breaks and just fix it on his own initiative, on his own dime. And then he'll come back and he'll help coordinate and bring it up the uprights and the standards. And these people are there, you know, and he's a masters athlete too. I didn't give you your props there. And these folks are at every setup and every teardown of every games we do. And I mean, we've got some really great people who just understand it, get it, and they show up, they help, they put in that extra work, and most of them aren't getting paid.
Yeah,
I think that's the hard one to find. Those are the unicorns. But for a lot of the judges, I think what ends up happening is it's like, well, you know, I think this last year I caught a lot of people when they had injuries, but they still want to be part of the games. They don't want to be left out. So it was an opportunity for me to get a lot of new judges trained. And it's like, hey, look, you're not going to be forgotten. You can be part of the games and you'll make a little scratch. It's not a ton, you know, it's $150 a day. And if it's, you know, a decent ways away from here, we'll usually get some kind of hotel accommodations for you. And so, you know, for some folks, you know, the opportunity, if you're in the SoCal area and you've got to go all the way out to Ventura, which is kind of, at least from San Diego, that's about a 3-hour drive. You know, that kind of turns into something's kind of cool. It's like I can make $300 over the weekend. I get my hotel taken care of. I get to hang out with cool people. And, you know, I don't know, I'm part of the community and I helped. It's by no means a fair wage. You know, not at all. I really want to see if we can push that up this year, honestly. I think we'll be able to. I've heard, I think, I don't want to call him out, but one of the fellows that you interviewed, I believe other parts of the country are paying $200 a day. And I think we can absolutely do that. So that's one of the changes I hope to implement this year. But there's even other things that I want to try to do because, like, you know, when we pull someone in from Tucson, that's like God, that's a 7-8 hour drive if it's a San Diego games. And, we will typically get the event, if it's a festival, to cover Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah.
Well, what happens on Sunday? So you're working all day Sunday. You're tired because you've been out there 2 days in the sun. And then what you're supposed to help us pack it up and then jump in your car and roll into your house around 2 a.m.
Yeah.
On fumes. So that's another place where one of the things I want to try to do this year is to change this old paradigm of like, you get 2 hotel nights and $150 and that's it. And that's what anybody else has ever gotten. And that's, that's how my grandpappy did it. And that's how you're going to like it. And, like, fuck all that. We can do better. We can absolutely do better. And I think if you're going to have to pull judges because they're good and you want them and they're going to make your games better and they're from X amount of miles away, or it's going to require X amount of hours drive, then get them an extra hotel stay. Like let them go home on Monday, chilled, rested, with that fancy hotel breakfast, and let them do that. So I think there's things we can do to be better than what we've been doing. But in general, yeah, it's $150 a day, a free hotel room. But in many cases, I mean, God, they've even got to still pay for parking.
Yeah.
So, it's like, God, so things like that. We got to work on that too. Let's see if we can get the festival to waive their parking because they're working, and if not, then let's cover the expense ourselves. So there's more and more I think we can do because I just feel like we're really this sport is fragile. Anyone who has any role in putting these games together should understand that, and you don't want to take advantage of people. And if people feel like they're getting a raw deal, they'll stop helping you. They'll stop making those long drives. And so, I think we've got to do as much as we can to be as fair as possible with them, because at the end of the day, that $150 or $200, that's nothing, man. It really is.
No. I like the way you're looking at it because most of the other ADs I've talked to have done it, which makes me happy that I've surrounded myself with people who I think are thinking right. But it's ADs who haven't lost the sight of like you're providing a product to everyone else. I think you have some people who kind of get caught up in the, like you said, I'm the AD and this is the way it's always been done, and you're lucky to come pay me money to throw at my game for this sport that you'll never make money at. And I think that's a weird way for some people to look at it. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it. I think we are providing a service both to the venue and to the athlete, and I think that just because we are taking in some of the money, that doesn't change that dynamic. And so it's nice to know.
No one is getting high on the hog here in this sport.
No.
And if you've been around enough, or you know enough old guys to hear the stories, the few people who have tried to get high on that hog in this sport, they don't last. And if they're still around, they probably got a bad reputation. It just isn't like that, unfortunately. It is a labor of love. It just really, really is. And you try to do what you can to be as fair as possible to everyone that's helping you out, and hopefully they see that. But the second anybody tries to dip their hand in that pot and take more than their fair share, man, everything goes to hell.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah. So that's great. And I love thinking about that side of the mindset. But is there anything that you wish athletes knew? Anything that you either hear as a gripe that is because of misinformation? Like I've heard people complain about registration fees, and I think it really is just a lack of them knowing where money goes. Or is it a complaint about how things are run day of because they don't take into account that there's more going on here than just the athletics field? There's an entire other organism. Like, is there any one thing that you hear a lot that you kind of wish you could explain to people?
I think that there's a group out here that's going to be running the games in January. It's a practice group, and it's kind of just talking to a lot of them about how that process is going and trying to help them to understand little things. Like I was like, hey, so you're probably not going to have a lot of spectators, but some friends and families are going to show up. It's just kind of a season opener, backyard kind of thing. And I'm like, have you thought about getting any spectator insurance? And they're like, huh? It's like, yeah, man. You like, this is a dangerous sport, man. Like, and I don't imagine you're going to have full on hammer cages or, a lot of, the protection that you'd like to have. But even when you do have all those things, shit happens.
Yeah.
And so, you can get athletes to sign waivers. Okay, that's cool. But, every now and then, an errant weight or a broken shackle, something goes the wrong way. And, you don't want some little kid getting hurt. And, forget about the lawsuit. I mean, that's nothing. Just the idea of hurting some innocent, bystander who just came to have, a good time. And so, you want to do everything you can to be as safe as you can, but having that little bit of insurance, which is not that expensive, is a big deal. And it costs you a couple $100 for a whole weekend. And so things like that, people are like, oh, wow. And I think the more people get involved in this stuff, they start to understand all the little pieces to it. I mean, I remember San Diego this year, we had 135 athletes, I think, and it was hot. And I bought tons of water, had tons of ice, and we still run out. And I was calling, I called Grubhub, and I was like, hey, go to Smart and Final and get me as many, things of water and ice. And I found a driver, and I was like, sweet, this is awesome, because I really couldn't leave the venue. Mm-hmm. And then when they got around, security wouldn't let them in to make the drop off to us. And it was like, oh. And so she's like, don't worry about it. I think I know a back way. So she found some back way and got through security to get over to me. And it was just like, I mean, bless her heart, man. I mean, she's a freaking rock star and saved our asses. But like when we got that water back out there, everyone was just like, oh, geez, like they all came back to life again. They were dying. And, just all the things that you try to do, all the things you try to think about in advance. I mean, you just never know, man. Like, did you get enough PVC? It's electrical conduit, I know, but it's easier to say PVC. Did you get enough PVC shafts for possible broken hammers? What if you didn't? What happens now? What do we do? Do we have enough Gorilla duct tape for, repairing cavers? Yeah. Do we have enough backup cavers to where we can keep a class-sized caber for everybody? I mean, gosh, I've had judges get heat stroke. And do we have a backup? Do we have someone that can handle that? I mean, there's a lot of different things that you think you've got covered, and then you don't. Yeah. And we're doing our best. We're all just trying our best to make sure that everyone's safe and having a good time, and preferably kind of learning and doing well. We want to put on a good show too, and I guess maybe that's a thing too. For the athlete, especially the novice and the C, this is a competition to them. They're testing themselves. They're trying to get to a certain level and see how they can do relative to maybe the guy that got them into this or somebody they looked up to. But these events, these festivals, they look at us like entertainment. Mm-hmm. We hear this all the time. You need to entertain from this time till this time, but get the hell off the field by this time. And it's like, whoa. So in addition to did I get enough shirts? Did we get enough water? Are our judges all going to be able to make it throughout the day? Is everyone going to be safe? Now you've just got so many other things that are always on your mind. And, I've got to make sure that the festival people are happy with us and that we delivered proper entertainment. Mm-hmm. They could care less if the competition goes well. They just want people to be entertained. There's people all the time, you've probably seen it yourself, but people in the crowd who are like, this is a competition? I thought you all just out here just kind of showing off, just, doing like we're cosplayers or something. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, these guys, they they're friendly, but they definitely want to they want to knife every one of those guys in the back. Like they will cut a bitch. This is serious competition. We take this seriously. And that's something that's really kind of lost on a lot of people, but it's a delicate thing. It's hard for us to, us as ADs to deliver a compelling, fun, entertaining product get the athletes everything they need to feel appreciated, from being hydrated to having a decent award to shirts that don't suck that they might want to wear afterwards. It's a lot of stuff, and once you start doing it, you start to realize. But it's really easy to criticize. It's a whole different animal when you get your hands in there and you try to make a change for better. It's a lot of work, and it's. I would just caution anybody who ever really has a lot of criticism to just really ask themselves, what solutions do they have in mind that could really be, replace that criticism, and maybe get involved. Start talking to them. Say, hey, could maybe I come out and help and do this, or could I maybe be a judge? What's the process look like? That will go a lot longer than bitching and whining and moaning, or the worst, the keyboard warrior who's whining in Facebook about this, that, or the other thing. It's like, that's really cute. That's cool. Just we're doing our best.
Yeah, that's a fantastic segue, because you hit on all the points, because this is something I wanted to talk to you about. Like you said, you have new things that you want to announce. I'm doing new things, and I'd imagine your goal is probably fairly similar to mine. And I saw a post about this literally yesterday on like the NASGA Legends group, where somebody was like, hey, we don't have enough people pushing to actually be better in the sport. And it was just a lot of people bitching. There weren't a ton of people offering real solutions, in my opinion. It's Facebook. So that's going to be what it is. And to be fair, I didn't read every comment. I got tired of it, and I just went time. I went and worked on my potential solution, or at least what I'm doing to try and chip in. But so you have new things that you're doing that I'm hoping are going to push people to be better, give them something to train for and shoot for. So tell everyone about them.
Make sure I get my dates right here. I got a little cheat sheet here. Well, the first thing is something that we haven't actually announced yet, and so I guess we'll have to figure out when this actually does air, and we'll try to coordinate. But I'm saying it here first.
Get this out before the end of the year, like within the next few days. So
then easily you will beat me. I'll wait till New Year's to put anything in print. But we actually we have a new event that'll be happening in 2025 at the Flagstaff, Arizona Highland Games. Unfortunately, because Phoenix got canceled, this is going to be the Arizona season opener all the way out in July. But the SAAA now will be doing that games, and we're really excited about it. And it's an interesting area because, you think Arizona in July, you think, oh crap, it's going to be really hot. But Flagstaff is actually at elevation, and it's one of the coolest places in the entire state. So it kind of sets up pretty nice to where if you're looking for some relief in the middle of the summer, come on out to Flagstaff. It's also about 45 minutes, about an hour or so. I got to double check, but from the Grand Canyon. So, you want to go out there, you want to, have a trip with the family. Hey, go take a look at the Grand Canyon. It is a really big hole.
Hole in the ground, think that, but bigger.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're really excited about that. And so, we understand that, it's games that has been around, but it maybe wasn't getting the TLC that it deserved. And so we want to change that. And so one of the things we're going to do is I've thought about the amateur women's division. And, we don't have many. At first, I'll tell you the truth. My thought was, what is a good path for pro status? Now, obviously, the whole title of pro with women has always been kind of a difficult issue because no one has really ever made it clear. And, the opportunities are few and far between, and this, that, and the other. So I think as a stepping stone towards getting to something like that, we need to establish some bigger events for somebody who's coming up to try to make a name for themselves, to try to get on the radar of ADs who are filling out rosters looking for pro women. And so what we're going to do this year is we've got a number of different opportunities, and Flagstaff is going to give an opportunity to the amateur women, and we're actually going to do one for the amateur men as well. But we're going to have the first ever West Coast championships.
Nice.
And this will be very similar to some of the things that have gone on. Danny Webster has the East Coast Women's Championships. And we have some
yeah. They
bigger.
was Mid-Atlantic Scottish Athletics, so she runs the East Coast Championship for men. So
yeah. There's that. And so we have some bigger ideas on where this will go. When we've had some really good conversations with Danny, and in 2026, just after we're done with this particular games, we'll have some much bigger announcements for 2026. But in 2025, Flagstaff will be home to the West Coast Amateur Women's Championship and the West Coast Amateur Men's Championship. So
nice.
We want to, and I want to do more than just a fancy trophy. I want to do something here that, I'm definitely thinking about cash. I'm thinking about ways to kind of pay these people out and make this worth their while. When we have some additional things moving forward to kind of build this out, we'll be looking at things to further incent the athletes along the way to where this event could take them. So again, those are kind of more 2026 things. But this year, we've got that. I'm excited about it. But I think there's more we can do there too. I think so. We'll look at Flagstaff as basically, think about it as the highlighting of the men's and women's A classes. One of the hard parts about it is I want it to be amateur. But again, we have this ambiguity on women's pro class. So I think what we'll do is we will, and a lot of this is still a little bit in flux, and we'll get this in print here pretty soon. But I think what we'll do is we will say anybody who has not participated at a Worlds, I think probably in the last 3 years, would qualify. So anybody else. So we will make this a true amateur championship in that regard.
It's a good way to look at it for now until pro class catches on.
Yeah, and this is all very new, and to tell you the truth, I should talk with you guys pretty soon, because I think what we might end up doing, I had thought about applications, but honestly, I'm kind of liking the way things are going with Heavy Athlete. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll just figure out a time period, which will probably be all of 2024 and a few months into, and maybe we'll go as far as like April. And we'll scrub a list, and we'll just start looking at who qualifies and start sending out invitations. But I think that this could be a cool way to kind of highlight that event. And so within the context of the whole conversation about how do you make events better, I think this is one of those ways to do it. Now I would not want to make every single class have a championships at every single event. That you water down the product, it makes no sense. So Flagstaff will be where we'll do this again with the men's and women's, the highest amateur athletes we have. I'm looking at doing the same thing in San Diego for our lightweights. We would have West Coast championships for our men's and women's lightweights in San Diego. And we've got some other opportunities that we aren't ready to announce yet, but look like we'll be able to do some things with the masters class, again, in terms of a West Coast championship, and that we're working on. But so I think that there's some good things we're doing there. We're still going to try to make sure that Valkyrie is taken care of, all women's event. We're looking at different things this year where we're going to try to bring Megan McKee in to do a clinic and really provide some value on the day prior. And working with the Sisterhood of Highland Throwers to help us with that. So I guess back to kind of the conversation. It takes a village. You got to work with people. You've got to have friendships. You got to make more friends than enemies, and just really kind of think about how can I put the sport first? How can I create opportunities? I think all of us want to find a way to make a name for ourselves, but no one really knows how. And not to pick on them, but because I absolutely love the event, but I always think of Pleasanton. People, they don't know how to go to Pleasanton. Like, how do I qualify for that? How's that work?
You look at the Celtic. You had some people who weren't the Celtic is. And then at least now, next year, Heavy Athlete is running a Celtic track where it says, here's the cutoff line and here's what it takes to qualify. Here are what games are fielded. So that's gotten clarified. But yeah, there have been a lot of games like that, where it's supposed to be a championship or an elite game. Everyone's kind of unclear on how to get there, which then makes it unclear about, well, is it? Like if so-and-so can go and this other guy can't go, then was it the competition we're touting it as? And the world has gotten a lot smaller, and with databases like Heavy Athlete, it becomes really easy to start fact-checking people on, was it what you said it was, or was it not? Did you just get away with this all through the 90s and early 2000s? No your state knew about it, and so
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I've seen it where I've tried to get into certain events over the years, and they would say, there's one in particular that will just always kind of aggravate me, but I wanted to go into this event, and they said, we're only going to take the top 8, and I said, fantastic, I finished 7th last year. They're like, cool, but you don't qualify. I'm like, that's mathematically impossible. Like that makes zero sense. And so I think it's important to be very transparent. So I think, again, I'm going to put pen to paper and make this official relatively soon. But I think the plan that makes sense to me for the events we're going to be holding with these West Coast Championships, I think what we will probably do is we're going to take top 12, but we're going to hold out 3 spots for SAAA current members and say, hey, if you're a loyal member, we'll take the best 3 lightweights who are members of the SAAA, and then the other 9, and let's just say it. Let's just say, like, these 3 guys are getting in here because they're cool with us, and that's that. I don't want to have any ambiguity or confusion, because like the example I gave you, clearly they weren't taking the top 8. It was more like top 3 or 4, and then we got 4 homies in the area that can drive in.
Yeah, no, that's I'm over here smiling because literally everything you just said is the same thing that I'm going to be doing with our Woodridge game, what I've put up as my little backdrop here, and what we're calling the Blue Ridge Championship. I literally I swear to God, you and I haven't talked about this, but it's almost the same. This is what's hilarious. So I decided that Matt and I had always wanted to, before it became just me, AD, and all the Going Rogue games, we wanted at least one game that stood above anything else that we did, to host some sort of championship or something. And we bounced around 1,000 ways to do it, never land on it. Then we started running games here, and I was like, okay, this is really cool. It's in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, like gorgeous venue, really on a mountaintop in the middle. Like, it's so cool. How do we do something else that's also going to give amateurs something for? Because me and Alex, the Massa AD who runs ECC, about it. Last year, almost half of their ECC athletes didn't show up. This East Coast Championship that was regarded so highly, mostly because it was a stepping stone to going pro. Like, one of the big 3 games out here, where if you win these, you go pro. It isn't having the participation it used to. And I think part of that is because less pro games. So how do you encourage amateurs to keep rising and training for something? And so I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to invite the top 2 men and the top 2 women from every state the Blue Ridge Mountains runs through out to that game. They don't pay a registration fee. $450 on the line for men, and there's $450 on the line for women. And I'm haven't made official yet. I'm edging toward a per event payout and an overall. So, like, you win an event, you put $20 in your pocket, and then 1st through 5th all have way in the overall. So, like, hypothetically, if you showed up and swept all 9, you'd walk away with over $300 if I did my math right. And I was like, I want to give. I mean, the $300 as a man would be fantastic. I'd be ecstatic if you've paid for all of my travel out here and do this. Great. So we wanted to do something, and I wanted it to be men and women, and I wanted to give everyone in this region something to shoot for. Like a championship that is cool because it's historic and is a benchmark is all well and good, but if that's not filling seats and registration, like what will? And I was like, well, cold hard cash usually motivates people to go do something. And I was like, I think this would be great. So we're literally just going to August 1st have Mike, the programmer for Heavy Athlete, run a report, and it'll be the top 2 ranked women and the top 2 ranked amateur men for every class. And as our wild cards, it's if you finish top 1 or 2 in the AMs last year at that game. So like Frank came all the way to the West Coast, he'll get an invite next year because he won the Open Men. So he gets to be a wild card at the Blue Ridge Championship, even though the Blue Ridge doesn't run through his state. And I was like, it makes way too much sense not to do it. Like,
Yeah.
why not?
No, I agree, and I think it's that kind of thinking that it's will create some cool opportunities that will get people to want to get to particular games, that to travel, and then moving forward, it's up to us to make sure that we can continue to do this year in and year out.
Yeah,
and that's what makes every game special. I mean, that's why you look at Pleasanton, that's run for 158 consecutive years, except for stupid ass COVID, it ran through 2 world wars. It ran through, I think, 3 major earthquakes in the Bay Area. Nothing stopped that thing, and that adds to the prestige. So I think it's really important that once you decide to get it's like you decided to adopt a dog.
Yeah.
You're doing this for the whole freaking way, man. There's no half-assing this, and so I think that's important. It's not enough to just be like, yeah, I'm going to slap a title on something this year, and then it might not exist next year. You've got to continue to build on it. I think you work with other folks to help legitimize it. There's things you can do to create tiers and steps, and now different events are now just kind of elevated from other events and now are just viewed as bigger and bigger and bigger. I think we lost a little bit of that. And you mentioned, the lack of pro opportunities has hurt things. I used to look at it and again, I've only been around, 10, 12 years, but I thought if there's a pro class at this games, I want to be there.
Yeah.
That's a bigger event than others. If there's pros there, then this is a more special event.
Yeah.
And then we started to see things falling off, and it's like, well, what is special? What isn't special anymore? And then in some cases, it's like, well, how do I even qualify for that? So we need to get rid of that ambiguity. We need to kind of clarify things. I think Highland Games is a lot like the college bowl system was. It's like, is the Fiesta Bowl greater than the Rose Bowl? No, but but who really understands that if you're coming into the sport new, and you need to kind of have that groundwork laid, and the problem though is then egos get involved and no one wants to be in charge of the Holiday Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl. They all want to be the Rose Bowl. They all want to be something big, but you can't all be the best, so hopefully, I tend to believe that we're at a place right now where, and you're talking to a lot of the people right now, I think we've got a lot of folks who just maybe have a little bit more open mind about what we can do with this sport. I think we all kind of understand how fragile the sport is, and we've got to figure out a way to work together and create better opportunities, better spectacles, or this thing will go away. And out here in the West, we just lost Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Phoenix is a big freaking deal, man. That was a staple of my season, every year. We always started in Phoenix. In Phoenix, you would get Scott Farr to come down from wherever he was at. I think he came down the last time. I think he was in Alaska. You would get the Blatnicks to come on over, all the way over to Arizona, in February, and you would get.
They don't want to be in the Carolinas and all that in February. It's miserable.
Well, true, but how Eddie and Heather McDonald were able to do that year in and year out just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
But I mean, in every class, I mean, you want to be part of that. And I think I remember a couple of years ago, there were some of the guys that were kind of on the lower end of my class, and they were like, man, I was just so stoked to see so many world's podium and world championship guys going at it, and to have that that great seat. But to me, I think of it as, well, that's awesome for you, but I'm also going to do what I can to try to help you out. That's just who I am. I'm always trying to help people out, no matter what. So, but people in every class, they could just see it. It's like it's actually it's weird. It's how I started my whole Tip Tuesday thing, was Phoenix, and it was like I looked around and it's like, Adrian's here, like everyone's here. I'm like, I should use this. I should, and so it's weird when you see that something that was as well regarded, as well received and participated in as Phoenix could go away, of major games. I just hope that everybody understands that, the work we're trying to make sure that is not the norm. And unfortunately, in some cases that means we're gonna have to create new Phoenixes, new opportunities, and they might not be household names at first, but we're gonna work our ass off to try to make them that way.
You got to start somewhere, and the kind of the beauty of this sport is that nothing's stopping you. It's whatever you want to make of it. So.
Well, yeah, and I think that the stuff you guys are doing is awesome. I love the stuff that Christian down in Texas is doing with indoor games. Mm-hmm. Guys that are not 40 and 50 and 60 who are saying, what can I do to make this sport better? And is that the database? Is that a scoring system? Is that the ticketing system? Is that running games? Is that creating championships? Is that just inviting a guy from my gym out to practice to kind of see if this sport is cool or not? There's so many things you can do on every level, but we kind of all need to do it. And if we don't, I mean, I don't want the sport to be relegated to that group of people that are whining on Facebook about how things used to be and spraying everybody down with their hose on their porch. I get it. Things were pretty bitching a while back. We were on the Ocho. I've seen it. It's pretty cool. You want to go back further than that? Yeah, I've seen Francis Brebner throwing, throwing cabers in little baskets in a game show. That was pretty cool. But what are we going to do now? How are we going to make this thing cool now? And we got to think outside the box to figure out how do we make it attractive to people that are throwing now. And it's not enough to just say things were really cool back in the day. Okay, yeah, great. But we didn't adapt well enough, apparently.
Yeah.
So, so let's come up with solutions.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I think that's a great leave out, man. Just telling everyone to stop bitching and fix it. So I'm all for it.
Absolutely, man. There's a lot that can be done. Again, and I thank you guys. You guys have been kicking ass. I am really hoping that things go well with all things heavy athlete and and all the games that you guys are pushing and running and participating in. I mean, we've all got to try to help each other to be as successful as we can, because it's a rising tide, lifts all boats, and we got to do that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks so much for coming on.
No problem, buddy.
Later.
Take it easy.